Another uneventful, quiet, sunny day in Seoul. In an alley, 4 high school students were waiting for a young man with a notebook in his hands, who did not want to talk to them at all. The young man stared pointedly at the notebook, without even raising his eyes to the people around him, and asked them to quickly explain themselves so that he would not be late for the academy. The bully was embarrassed by such impudence, thoughtfully scratched his head and repeated the name of the guy with the notebook twice. Without waiting for a normal dialogue, the young man walked past the aggressive high school student, which led him into even greater bewilderment. The other guys began to grin sarcastically at how their friend was ignored. Angry at the demonstrative indifference, the bully turned after the leaving young man and loudly told him to stop. The aggressor swung at the guy from behind, intending to hit him with his fist. Having carefully closed the notebook, the young man manages to turn around and hit his potential offender before the fist lands right in his back. The guy falls to the ground with a crash from such a strong and unexpected blow. He began to get up little by little after the fall, holding his neck, while uttering curses under his breath. In this situation, he listened to advice from his rival not to pester him, that he had his own affairs and he definitely had no time for stupid attacks. At some point, the guy on the ground starts grinning, and through clenched teeth told his interlocutor that he was a corpse. The young man did not even suspect that one of his aggressor friends was already standing behind him and swinging a bat. A strong blow landed right in his back. The young man was thrown into shock and began to fall. Once on the ground, drops of blood began to fall from him while the bully with a bat loomed menacingly over him. The guy he punched earlier sat opposite him and recommended that he not argue with their group at school and be a good boy. To which the guy, with blood running down his face, looked up at the offender and called him a bastard. The bully was angry that his victim resisted to the end and decided to test his pride. He told his company to take care of him. The guy began to move away, simultaneously watching as 3 tall guys began to beat the lying schoolboy. Suddenly, purple sparks began to fall from the sky, which confused him greatly. He noticed that there were more and more of them, and could not understand what they were. When I turned around, the space next to the scene of the beating was filled with these mysterious sparks. The group of bullies began to look at each other, wanting to make sure whether it seemed to each of them. While they found out whether it was all their imagination or not, the rumpled guy began to cough and gradually get up. The aggressors were very surprised that he was still alive. To prevent him from getting up, his head was pressed to the asphalt with a foot. A young man appeared next to the main bully and made a strange remark that nothing had changed after 20 years. The aggressor was frightened by the unexpected appearance of a stranger, looked at him, and asked what the hell he was doing here. A guy who appeared out of nowhere began to examine the guy next to him, was surprised that his uniform remained the same, and the surprised guy called him a homeless person and wondered if everything was the same with him. The stranger got angry because he was called a homeless person, and began to ask him threateningly whether he understood who he had insulted now. The bully friends started whispering among themselves about the guy's unexpected appearance, where he was studying, and what they would do next. The beaten guy with glasses raised his head at the mysterious young man who appeared out of thin air. It didn't matter to the stranger that the beating situation looked like a conflict between friends, but he didn't want to leave it that way. The bully started poking at the young man and telling him to go where he was going, so that some homeless person wouldn't interfere in their business. The stranger listened to the instructions of the high school student, which said that it was time to stop pretending to be someone if he did not want to be beaten. The guy didn't understand why the youth had become so rude and informed his interlocutor that he himself was a great high school student, 20 years older than them. The bully punched the guy opposite him in the chest and asked him not to talk nonsense and to run away while he could. In response to this blow, the guy rudely and unexpectedly grabbed, as he called him, the junior student by the arm and began to threaten him with breaking his arm if he did not stop enraging him. The guy pulled his hand out of his interlocutor's hand and called him crazy. The bully swings at the guy, shouting that he's in trouble. A stranger with a calm face looks at the fist that flies straight into his face, but he manages to dodge the blow and the fist flew past his head. The bully was surprised that he did not hit his opponent and did not understand where he had gone. The mysterious guy found himself at a distance of a couple of meters from the aggressor and informed him that he had gone too far, calling his interlocutor a high school student who was gone. The guy raised his hand to the level of his face, saying as he did so that they would get more of theirs, but first they would see something incredibly frightening. He began to perform maneuvers with his brush and something began to happen. The guy raised his hand even better and whispered to himself incomprehensible and mysterious phrases. After he raised his hand even higher and stopped mumbling, he snapped his fingers. The group of bullies stood in bewilderment at everything that was happening and simply watched. But after the click, nothing happened and the situation became ridiculous. The guy looked at his hand and didn't understand why nothing had changed. He clicked again and again, waiting for something to happen, and did not pay attention to related questions from others about what he was doing. The guy didn't understand why his magic didn't work. The main bully began to get angry and asked a rhetorical question about what was wrong with today. He glanced at the beaten high school student, who was still lying on the ground, and remembered how he tried to contradict them. He looked at the clicking stranger, whom he thought was crazy. The stranger stopped clicking and glanced at the aggressive high school student. He began to slowly turn to face him and looked at him menacingly. Coming a little closer, the mysterious guy informed his opponent that he had finished the game. He began to raise his pursed finger to the bully's forehead, but he did not have time to analyze the situation and stood in a daze. The guy hit him with such force that the high school student flew off. The bully falls backwards with enormous force. The blow from an ordinary finger was so crushing that the wall on which the blow fell cracked. Everyone else watched what was happening with their mouths open, unable to move from their place in surprise. The stranger stood opposite the fallen guy and looked at him. The guy, rubbing his finger, asked the others about who would be next. After some time, the whole company of bullies lay on the asphalt after a short fight with a magical stranger. The head of the company continued to lie in the same place where he fell because he lost consciousness. The schoolboy who was accosted by this company looked with admiration at the guy who had scattered all his enemies in no time. He was surprised by how with one finger he scattered 4, albeit insignificant but strong guys. The guy became interested in who this stranger was. The shabby guy shook himself off, stood up from the asphalt and thanked his savior. The stranger said that there was nothing to be grateful for and asked what day it was. The guy repeated his question, to which the interlocutor replied that today is September 10th. Next came a question about the year. The young man with magical abilities was extremely surprised that it was already 2021. He expected that he was in 2036 and wondered what had happened to him. After that, the guy turned around and began to move away from the battered young man, advising him not to get involved in fights anymore. Watching the guy savior leave, only one question popped up in his head. Who is this guy? Having moved some distance away from the student, he raised his hand above his head. The guy snapped his fingers and repeated the word teleport twice, and the watching young man realized that he was too crazy for a second year. But again, after the click, a miracle did not happen, and the guy began to return to the young man, and he was spinning the thought in his head that he did not want this. He only wanted the stranger to leave. The magician guy asked what the name of the rescued schoolboy was, to which he replied that his name was John. The stranger, after learning the name, decided to ask a new acquaintance for a favor. He leaned slightly towards John and asked if he had money, but he did not immediately understand the question and asked again. The guy began to explain to the schoolboy in a whisper in his ear that he had returned too early and could not use his magic yet. And at that moment the schoolboy had in his head the thought that the crazy person had driven him into a corner. The young man told John that he had just returned from another world to Earth using molecular teleportation, but in the process, something happened to the mana control system. He usually used the teleport to move to his home, but now it does not work. And the student decided to help resolve the situation with 2,001. As a result, the guy with magical powers had as much as 5,001. He walked down the street and thought about how good a guy he had met, that he would have to somehow repay him for the generous gift. Walking past store windows, he looked at his reflection and thought about how lucky it was that only 5 earthly years had passed. And this is not so much, and he is only 24. His parents are about 50 years old, and his younger sister, it's been a whole 7 years now, and she must have grown a lot. While walking, he noticed a very strange phenomenon for him. The military were standing near the metro, and he did not understand what this was connected with and what had to happen for this. The guy decided to ask the schoolgirls passing by why the military were standing right at the entrance to the metro and addressed them politely. They looked at each other. They, laughing a little, answered him that this is a normal phenomenon. Military personnel at the entrance to the dungeon, and jokingly asked if he had come from North Korea. The guy didn't understand what the girls meant and watched them leave with a look of incomprehension. He saw an entrance where there were no military men and decided to go down into this dungeon. The young man saw that the passage further was locked. Turning his head, he saw a post on which the keys lay. Without thinking for a long time, the guy opened his way further, and after he went a little deeper, he saw that the metro was not working. His assumption was that the metro stations were completely closed. He couldn't answer himself why he had gone down there, and suddenly a notification appeared that he had entered the dungeon through the first entrance. The guy was also notified that the dungeon was being cleared. He could not understand what had happened to the Earth over these 5 years. When he tried to return, it turned out to be impossible. The guy realized that the door was locked for a reason, and that he needed to find some kind of return stone to get out of there. He heard a rustling sound and glanced around the room behind him. It was difficult to understand whether it seemed to him or not. It felt as if monsters were coming towards him. Hearing another strange sound, he was sure that he was really not alone, and a huge, toothy, and red creature was attacking him from behind. The guy manages to bend down, and the creature jumps over him. He showed his palm to the likeness of the animal and uttered the word curb. But the spell did not help, and the creature jumped on the man again. And again the guy manages to jump away from his potential threat. He recognized that in front of him was a creature called a drabbit, a monster from Alphen, and he understood that he had forgotten there. Noticing a crowbar next to him, the guy quickly reached for it. First, it was necessary to get rid of the terrible monster. He pierced the head of the terrible creature with a crowbar, thus killing it even if his magic did not work, but all the same, the drabbits were nothing to him. Turning around, he noticed that Drabbit was not alone. There were many of them. They were all aggressive and lined up in a row, he assumed on purpose, but he was not afraid. After a couple of minutes, all the drabbits were destroyed. He understood that at least he dealt with them calmly, but if someone stronger came, problems might arise. A new notification popped up in front of him, telling him that his level had increased. The guy couldn't understand whether this inscription made sense, because his strength disappeared, and the fact that he was now a novice was revealed. Looking at the killed monsters again, the young man began to think about this increase in level, and realized that he saw nothing wrong with becoming stronger while the drabbits were running around the city. From the screen that appeared, he learned that due to returning to the first level instead of the 99th, he was given points of characteristics and skills. But what kind of skills they were, what the combination box and the achievement store on the screen meant, he could not understand. Having studied the screen a little, the guy learned to combine materials to create an item, understood how the achievement store works, comparing it with online shopping, and chose the skills he now needs to search, detect, and summon a skeleton soldier. But it turned out that he did not have enough points to meet his needs, and decided to raise his characteristics for now. While he adds points to strength, agility, health, intelligence, mana, recovery, healing, and control, in the end he has no unused points left. The young man took the crowbar he used to fight the monsters in his hands, and decided to check how his strength had changed. He swung this crowbar. The speed developed such that the metal bent. The guy liked it. The goal was set, to find the Stone of Return, and this would require 10 points. To get the search option, it was necessary to kill 5 more drabbits. And suddenly a drabbit runs out of the darkness towards the guy. He is not afraid. He is driven by the desire to get out of the dungeon as quickly as possible. He was even pleased by the fact that the terrifying creature itself was running straight into his hands. After some time, he kills the last one and exhales tiredly. After the work done, his level rose to 3. There were too many drabbits, and they still could not end. Having acquired the required number of points, the young man finally acquires skills such as searching and tracking. After the acquisition, he immediately ordered a search to find the return stone, and it turned out that there was none nearby. He needed to go even lower to find the treasured stone, but the guy didn't particularly like this prospect. He realized that it was risky to fight the drabbits from time to time, and was not his thing, and decided to acquire something in the skill book. The young man distributed 10 points between mana and control and moved his palm to the side. He loudly ordered his subjects to rebel and used his magical abilities. Skeleton soldiers began to appear from the concrete floor. The guy led them on their first hunt in a long time. Skeleton soldiers and terrible morons ran at each other. The drabbits and skeletons clashed with each other. Watching the carnage, the young man understood that the current skeletons were no match for the drabbits, but this was enough to repel the first dangerous attack of the ominous creatures. The young man began shouting to his fighters to block the monsters with their bodies. When he finds the right moment, he himself helps finish off the drabbits. The young man realized that the drabbits could be used to call up soldiers again, which is what he did. Many new skeleton soldiers began to appear. Their master ordered them to block the monsters with their bodies. After blocking, the young man himself ran to the battlefield, while loudly shouting about his desire for the death of all these creatures. After all the drabbits have been killed, the guy realizes that he can now safely go home. Having asked the search to find the Stone of Return, he sees how in the distance the treasured stone shone red. An unfamiliar guy enters the subway, discussing something with himself. Suddenly he sees that the entrance to the dungeon is open. He does not understand how this happened. He comes to the realization that an unknown civilian is inside the dungeon, understands that he is finished. He decides to quickly call for help and starts calling his friends as soon as possible. But suddenly he notices a guy emerging from the depths of the dungeon. The guy also notices that he is not alone here, and goes to meet another living person in this place. At this moment, he is asked a question about his awakening. There are many crystals in the backpack. This is a very good catch. The young man, admiring this miracle, calls the guild members bastards, since while people like him risk their lives when they participate in raids, they take all the profits. He considers people idiots who would take the crystals to the procurement center, given that they will give for them on black several times more. A woman's voice comes from behind him, asking how he managed to steal so much and calling him a little rat. He turned around, saw a silhouette that was in the shadows, and asked who it was. A red-haired person came out of the shadows, who introduced herself as his death. Who came for him, in fact. She was the captain of the Cinnabar team, the Hwarang Guild. Her name was Nora. Nora, with a menacing look, begins to interrogate the guy about how he had the courage to steal the bloodstones from their dungeon, began to threaten him with death, and invited him to go with her, since he knows her. The guy understood that being caught and bumping into this woman was a very bad situation. He saw the only solution in the chance to escape. He ran towards Nora, using his magical powers, and decided not to give up just like that. But suddenly, the girl disappeared right a couple of centimeters before the guy would have arranged a duel. She appeared a moment later right above him and wished to die. The girl kills the brazen thief with one wave of her hand. She turned to the dying body of the guy and finally told him that he should have gone with her when she suggested it. Picking up a backpack with crystals, Nora noticed that she had received a notification on her mobile phone about an unauthorized portal at the first entrance to the dungeon. She wondered what kind of little rat dared to do this. The young man, who was finally able to leave the dungeon, stood at the bus stop and could not understand which bus he needed to take. Having arrived on some bus, he got off the transport. Thoughts about what had happened continued to gnaw at him. He understood that the world was no longer the same as before, that he was more like Alfred. Questions about his family also gnawed at him. The guy glanced at the building and was shocked by what he saw. He realized that this place was no longer his home, but a completely foreign building. The young man began to speculate about what had happened to his home, and even thought that it might have disappeared. He continued to look at the new, unfamiliar building and concluded that his family had moved, but it was too late to start looking for them. His stomach began to growl and he realized that he had not eaten anything all day. After some time, the main character was already eating hot ramen with a huge appetite. Having eaten to his heart's content, the guy leaned back in his chair and said that after that, he felt completely returned to earth. A new need arose. To go to the shower, he did not want to go to the bathhouse, but at the same time, he did not have enough money for an alternative internet cafe. The thought came about spending the night in the subway. The idea of the subway began to fall away after he remembered that it was all infested with monsters. A young man in glasses, John, stood in front of the entrance. Due to the fact that he did not have enough money for a full dinner, he decided to be content with ramen. He entered the store, and the young people immediately recognized each other. They had already met today. One saved the other. John was also extremely surprised by the unexpected meeting with a new acquaintance. He could not understand what this old fart had forgotten in this place. The dark-haired guy happily stood up and patted John on the shoulder, saying how glad he was to see him, and how well everything had come together, and the schoolboy only asked what he wanted from him. The guy asked if the students' parents were at home in order to talk to them about what happened in the morning, to which the younger one replied that his parents had died. The guy clumsily faked his joy with sympathy. The young man began to understand what his interlocutor wanted from him after asking for confirmation of the fact of his residence. The grown-up guy happily offered to go to John's house, and that it wouldn't be for nothing. John was handed a couple of coins, which he assumed were his money. Suddenly, hands were clapped aggressively in front of his face, and the young man was greatly shocked. The younger one stood in a daze, and the older one explained his behavior by saying that a fly was flying in front of the interlocutor's face. John reassured himself with the fact that all his borrowed money would definitely be returned to him. The next day, a guy with magical powers came to Mido High School. The teacher was very surprised by the fact that the once missing young man was still alive. The guy looked at his teacher with a warm smile and noted the fact that they had not seen each other for a long time. The teacher began to ask a lot of questions about where his student had gone and where he had been all this time, said that everyone considered him already dead. The young man confirmed this fact technically and said that he had returned. The dark-haired guy asked to see the list of students who are currently studying. In class, a pretty girl and a guy with glasses were having a nice conversation while a gang of bullies looked at them from behind with contempt. When the girl started to leave, the main bully aggressively touched the fragile girl with his shoulder and ordered her to get out of the way. The bully put his hand on the shoulders of the guy with glasses and mockingly began to ask about yesterday, calling it a good day because a madman appeared and interrupted their fight. The aggressor suggested finishing yesterday's dialogue to the young man with glasses. John calmly asked not to make any noise in the classroom. Yesterday's group of bullies surrounded the young man's desk, and the main instigator repeated his request with growing anger. The guy was grabbed by the hair and told that he didn't understand the situation he was in at all. Suddenly, from the other end of the hall, there was a cry for everything that was happening in the class to stop, and the aggressor remained standing in his place. A dark-haired guy stood in the doorway, whom the group of bullies knew as yesterday's madman. He noted how wonderful the meeting turned out. The main instigator recognized him and became even more irritated. Crazy, in their opinion, the guy told all the bullies to follow him. A large number of school children gathered on the roof. Some did not understand what was happening, and they were explained that the elder had just called Brad and his company, those same bullies, to a fight. Brad desperately waved his fists and asked the elder not to dodge his blows. He said that he looked like a coward. While the opponent was waving his fists, the elder thought in his head that there were people on Alphen and not on Earth who were full of arrogance because of strength and power. Time after time, the dark-haired guy dodged blows, accompanied by cries about his speedy death, and his thoughts did not stop. He realized that this schoolboy clearly did not know his place. He compared this to a bully with Ethan, his acquaintance from Alphen. Ethan was a bloodthirsty necromancer, calling only the souls of sinners. He tried in every possible way to frame the main character and set an alliance against him. The guy looked at Brad with a smile when he once again insulted him. The instigator ordered his gang to stop standing around and quickly attack his enemy. The rest of the bullies ran towards the dark-haired guy. He realized that there was only one way to deal with people like them. Drawing parallels, I came to the realization that this needs to be responded to tenfold with overwhelming force. A 1-on-4 duel began. The elder scattered all the company members in the corners and turned to their leader and told him to come up. The gang leader ran towards the guy screaming. A couple of moments later, the whole company was lying on the floor. The guy noted that the bully was too loud for simple garbage. Looking at the road from the roof, the young man noticed something. From the roof of the building, he noticed his mother hurrying to school. Mother and son began to hug after a long separation. Tears of joy flowed from their eyes. The son also shed tears from the hugs of his beloved mother. According to his mother, right after he disappeared for 5 years, there was an explosion of dungeons all over the world. Subway stations became dungeons in an instant. His father died on the way to work, and his mother had to take care of his younger sister, Mia, alone, due to the fact that their family was not wealthy. The family's financial situation quickly deteriorated because Mia got sick. Every day was torture. The kind son decided to help his mother and pick up his younger sister in kindergarten, and told his mother to stay at home and be careful. Looking around the new apartment, he felt how difficult it was for his mother to take care of the family alone, and the realization came that the family would not fit in such a room. The young man drew attention to the box against the wall. It contained my father's and his things. My mother could not throw them away. Realizing the reason why his mother couldn't throw them away made his heart skip a beat. Mia saw her older brother for the first time in a long time and did not recognize him. The guy sat down on his knee, stroked his sister's head, and remembered how he changed her diapers as a child. Mia's mother invited her to play with her older brother while she prepared dinner, and her sister happily agreed. After a hearty dinner, the main character could not fall asleep for a long time and looked at the ceiling while his relatives were sleeping a couple of meters away from him. He realized that everything was wrong. Memories of his being called to Alphen for no reason surfaced in his head. That world was like a game. The hero fought harder than anyone to survive at all costs against the cruel monsters and creatures of Alphen. In the end, he became a necromancer of the maximum level. Without seeing the end of his path, the guy returned to Earth after a meeting with the spatial administrator. All this was in order to reunite with his family. He wanted ordinary happiness. But the Earth to which the young man returned has changed a lot. His father is dead, and the family is barely making ends meet. The decision did not take long to come. The guy decided to earn money, because if he survived in Alphen, he will survive on Earth. The next day, he bought himself a new phone. He remembered the words of the unknown guy about awakening. This scene appeared before my eyes again, where the guy asked in surprise whether he was not awakened. The unfamiliar guy was scared to death that an ordinary civilian had ended up in the dungeon. He did not understand why the main character went deeper if there were no bloodstones. In the end, he was asked to sign. In my head, there were only thoughts about the necessary income, and hunting for bloodstones is a way that allows you to quickly get money. The guy decided to tell his mother that he would live with his friend for now and prepare for the entrance exams. Once again, he decided to ask John for help. Although he was ashamed of it, he was going to repay him later. But when he called the number left for him, it was not John who answered him at all, but an unknown man from an employment agency. This confused him. He double-checked the number several times, but dialed it correctly. It turned out that John had deceived the guy and left him his wrong number. A young man in glasses walked along the corridor of his floor and remembered the main character. Regretted that he had not thanked him. The company of bullies would no longer approach him. Entering home, John began to take off his shoes and heard a voice from the living room. The young man raises his shocked gaze to the sofa, in which he sees an acquaintance who saved his life twice, and asks him how he entered the apartment. The main character remembered the password. When John entered it at the entrance, the young man in glasses notified his friend that this was a burglary. The guy excused himself by the fact that he called him and asked him to better answer his question. John jumped and hit the table in surprise. His friend had awakened. The young man didn't understand how he hadn't thought of this before. The dark-haired guy was interested in the average earnings of awakened people. Earnings depended on the dungeon. First, the main character needs to register as an awakened one in the association, then join a guild and go on raids. It was still possible to get a job in an association or administrative bureau. The elder decided to ask whether it would be more profitable for him to clear the dungeon alone, to which the younger replied that, of course, it was more profitable, but it was also too dangerous, so it would be better to join the guild. For the guilds, it was necessary to pass entrance tests, and the eldest had neither the strength nor the time for this. The money was needed urgently, for which the interlocutor advised at least forming a group. Later, John asked his interlocutor to download the application on a new phone. The elder gave his phone into the hands of the younger, since he himself could not figure it out. The phone was very old, even ancient. John even assumed that it was the former phone of someone from the family. The guy was deceived and told that he was new, although he graduated 4 years ago. I remember the purchase scene. The seller with a feigned smile talks about the old phone as the best-selling, most durable model. The phone was very slow, but John still downloaded the dungeon forum onto his phone. There you could find information about dungeons and book them. The dark-haired guy asked a question about whether he could clear the dungeons that he found in this application, but the young man had already said that first he needed to measure the rank of the awakened one. Otherwise, he would simply die. It turns out that you have to pay to enter the dungeons. Even the low-level ones require 10,000 won. John watched as his interlocutor delved into the new proposal, but suddenly he turned to him. Once again, his newly made friend asked the young man for a loan. The main character, on John's advice, went the next day to the Awakening Management Bureau and was already waiting in front of the exam room. There was a black aura around the guy, which surprised everyone around him. No one understood how it happened. He stood in front of the dead rabbit, a black aura filling the space around him. The guy ordered the dead animal to rise. At that moment, a skeletal soldier of impressive size grows out of the rabbit. Everyone was so surprised by this ability that they stood with their mouths agape. The skeletal soldier stood next to his master, the creature holding a sword in his hands. The skeleton had fiery flashes in its eyes. He was told that he had the abilities of a necromancer. He said that he knew about it. People couldn't stop being amazed by this. It was the first time they had seen a person with such an ability. The summoner's abilities are assessed by the combat abilities of the summoned familiars, asked to order the soldier to attack. A hologram of a goblin appeared in front of them. The guy ordered his soldier to show all his power. The main character was assigned an F rank. He asked how high this rank was. It turns out that it was the lowest rank, but the guy didn't care. Who would even care about rank if he could enter the dungeon? The summoned familiar's power was weaker than expected, but it was still a unique ability, so finding a group would not be difficult. The guy stood on the street and chose a suitable dungeon for himself. A stranger approaches the main character and offers to join their group. There were 7 of them in the group, so there was room for the dark-haired guy. The guy refused, saying that he could handle it himself. The leader of the group, a green-haired guy, did not understand why the hero would spend so much money on entry if he could not carry many bloodstones due to the time limit. The guy thought about it, and the group members realized that he had only recently begun to engage in such activities. The green-haired one asked the protagonist about his rank, to which he answered honestly. The group leader realized that the guy opposite him didn't know much, suggested that he consider this as an experience and join them, and introduced himself as Mason. The entry fee is based on the maximum number of participants. A single person will cost 800,000 won per hour, which is too expensive. The maximum number of participants at the entrance is 8. To enter alone, you need to pay for 8. Therefore, in order to mine stones more efficiently, it is better to go as a group. The guy understood that he needed to get information, so going in a group is not so bad. His groupmate turned to the main character with the words that he was nervous and asked about the feelings of the main character. The main character replied that men should not show their fear, even if they are afraid. This guy's name was Liam. He was recruited in the same way as the main character. It seems he awakened 2 months ago, left school and began to earn money as an awakened one. 4 battered guys with multiple injuries emerged from the dungeon. These guys started talking among themselves about the hobgoblin they saw in the dungeon and could not understand where he came from. Mason said there was no point in complaining, that it was just a waste of time. Sometimes there are monsters in dungeons that shouldn't be there. The hobgoblin is a 2-star monster. Mason reassured the guys that they could handle everything calmly if they were careful. After entering, hobgoblins were waiting for the group inside. Liam launched a fireball at his opponents. The ball landed right on target and the goblins began to burn. Mason also decided to use his burning ability in the battle with terrible creatures. The goblins were burning and running away. All other team members also ran to attack. The unfamiliar guy ran at the goblins, waving his sword in all directions. After the battle, the guys complimented Liam's abilities, the protagonist's skeletons, and said that these soldiers were definitely above F rank. The main character spent the remaining points to raise the skill level. Apparently it was worth it. Mason, holding a bloodstone in his hands, said that such a catch was quite expected, and that the stones turned out to be very good. 1 taco stone would cost about 200,000 won. The dark-haired guy was surprised at such a price, because the crystal was small. Now it became clear why the awakened ones risked their lives, and the entrance fee is just pennies. They were only at the beginning of the dungeon. 1-star dungeons were not even close, but 2-star dungeons were a goldmine. They went down to the top floor and wanted to give it their all. There they met a huge hobgoblin, the leader of the little ones. Mason ordered not to be scared and to use the usual formation. The main character suggested that the green-haired one be a little more careful. Mason said that he learned the manual. The main ability of the huge goblin is a magical attack. The ability of one of the guys in the group, Thomas, is to create barriers. If you block the first attack and get closer, then victory will be ensured. The main character decided not to argue since the leader said so. Thomas began to block the attack, with members of the group supporting him from behind. He did his best to make the blocking work. Mason ordered an attack and used the burning ability on a huge monster. But despite this, the goblin continued to repel the attacks. Liam decides to help the commander and launches a fireball at the hobgoblin. The main character understood that the situation was extremely dangerous, and these monsters were among the monsters he met on Alphen. Compared to ordinary ones, these had high intelligence. For example, they could cast spells. Participants began to notice that the goblins began to change. One of the goblins threw some kind of piercing object into the neck of one of the participants. His body began to go numb. No one understood what was happening. The guy began to fall to the floor. Veins began to appear on his neck and face. What the main character was so afraid of happened. After all, the real danger of hobgoblins was not magic and strength, but the ability to lead thanks to their high intelligence. The goblin squad leader is not just another 1-star monster. Mason began to shout about retreating from the battle in order to quickly get out of this place. Liam launched a fireball at the goblins to delay them slightly. Mason understood that they could not cope. They needed to retreat immediately, but the participants did not understand what to do with Thomas, whether to leave him or not. The leader decided that Thomas was dead and once again ordered everyone to retreat. The goblins continued to attack the fleeing group from behind. One of the attacks hit Liam, he fell, and the group continued to run away. They decided to leave him. The main character remembered that he had not hunted goblins for a long time and went on the attack. He did not go into battle alone, but with his army of skeleton soldiers. Goblins under the command of a hobgoblin would be more difficult to deal with, after which he decided to attack the huge monster. While the skeletons were fighting the goblins, he needed to kill their leader. The main character puts a crowbar through the head of a huge hobgoblin, attacking him from above. After this murder, the guy was promoted to level 6. He became convinced that doing everything by himself is much better than in a group. He heard Liam grunt behind him and turned. Liam asked his friend for help in a quiet voice, and he was surprised that he was alive. The main character wanted to know what bonuses he would get if he helped Liam. He suggested not telling anyone that he had a D rank. The dark-haired guy didn't care at all whether anyone knew about it or not. Help was provided to Liam in return for which he collected bloodstones. Looking at the main character, Liam could not understand how he could be F rank, because he can hunt 2 stars. This is already D rank. In addition, he summons skeletons and uses the search to find bloodstones. He also cured Liam by pumping something out of a corpse. Taking all this into account, he must be C rank. The dark-haired guy asked how much he would get for these bloodstones, followed by Liam's answer that it would be 800,000. It must be good, considering that he only paid 100,001. The main character immediately notified the guy that all the crystals belonged to him. It turns out that saving Liam will cost him 2,000,001. They went to look for the return stone. Suddenly, a notification of low bloodlust detection was displayed. The dark-haired guy immediately stopped his partner. The guy immediately realized that there was an ambush in front of them because there were more monsters. He shouted to his escaped teammates to come out. After they went down, they were shocked because the 2 of them killed the monsters that the other team members were afraid of. The main character told Liam that they would have been attacked if they had come a little closer. The cured guy asked about the further plan of action. The owner of the crystals of this dungeon began to shame the rest of the team for running away like the last cowards. He thought they should have waited for the 2 of them at the barrier. Mason decided to remind them that they are all one friendly team. The explanation was that they simply returned to clear the dungeon after a tactical offensive, but all the monsters were dead. The main character asked not to play with him because they just wanted to escape after receiving the return stones, and now they saw that everything had been cleared out here, and they wanted more crystals. The guy pointedly poured all the stones of blood onto the floor, which surprised everyone. If they so want, they can try them now from the main character, to which Mason replied that they are not so stupid as to attack him, because he killed monsters with whom they could not do anything. Mason said that he was sorry that he left him and Liam, but his life was on the line. It was worth expecting this. The team simply returned for the return stones, but since they cleared everything out, then there was an opportunity to take Thomas's dead body. The main character was attacked by doubts. He could have confused the premonition of monsters with an ambush. He thought that he had become nervous after 20 years on Alfrin. But before he had time to think about it, Mason began to attack him with his ability. The leader of the unsuccessful group jokingly asked not to hold a grudge against him, saying that the awakened ones are all the same. At the entrance to another metro station, the guys thanked the red-haired Nora for her work. Her phone rang, and she was told that they had found an intruder. It turned out that there was no information about the intruder, but it was known that he registered as awakened today. Mason put a knife to the main character's stomach, but he was not afraid of such insolence. He knocked the knife out of his hands and knocked his potential threat to the floor. The dark-haired guy couldn't understand why everything was going exactly the way he thought. He looked at the rest of the team, calling them shameless traitors, blinded by bloodstones. Skeleton soldiers rose from the dead goblins and began attacking these traitors. The guy took a knife from the floor and walked towards the green-haired offender. Suddenly, Mason wanted to talk, but his opponent no longer saw the point in talking and joked that there was a delay in skill. The main character kills Mason. At this time, Liam watches this. He could not believe that the guy who saved him recently had just killed a man. In any case, the guy thought they were useless and asked if Liam thought they were so. He, of course, agreed with his savior. The hero noted that because of him, the saved person was in danger. The hero doubled Liam's debt because he saved him 2 times, asked to show his shoulder to heal him the 2nd time. At the exit from the dungeon, they were asked why they were only the 2 of them left. They replied that everyone had been killed by monsters. At the time, it was unclear how the 2 were able to collect the bloodstones. To which the answer was that the threat was a threat, and they didn't want to leave the money. Liam and the guy were asked to sign. The main character couldn't believe that he received more than 13 million for one raid. And if you add 4 million to this earnings, Liam's debt, you get as much as 17 million. It would be worth continuing to clear the dungeons yourself. Liam's thoughts were less joyful. He didn't have 4 million even with savings. He was thinking about asking for a price reduction. He called the main character. He turned and reminded his partner that he did not like it when a knife was stabbed in his back. Liam couldn't figure out exactly how much his debt was. 4 million or 400 million. There were no customers at all in the mobile phone store. The consultant stood at the cash register and yawned. The main character aggressively opened the door with his feet and went inside. He grabbed the customer by the collar and lifted him upstairs. I slapped the blonde consultant a couple of times. The consultant considered this man crazy, because in such a situation and with such blows, his life could have ended. After asking for mercy, the main character throws the consultant to the floor. The blonde knelt down and began to listen to what the guy who beat him would say. The main character did not like being stabbed in the back with a knife, and he was annoyed by people who deceived him. The consultant could not remember when he managed to deceive him. The dark-haired guy held out an old phone which was sold to him yesterday in this store. To the blonde's face. He could not recognize in today's bastard who treated him like that, yesterday's simpleton whom he had fooled. After a while, the hero was already walking down the street with a new good phone, still angry with the seller. Suddenly, the hero is called from behind by Kevin. He looks around and sees that he's surrounded. Nora talks to him. She is surprised at how he cleared the station alone and calls him fearless. Kevin indiscreetly asks the girl about her origin. She introduces herself as Nora, the leader of the Cinnabar group, the Hwarang Guild. The main character, using his detection skill, understands that this girl is strong. He asks what she and all these people need from him. Nora replies that one rat fearlessly roams the dungeons of her guild, hinting at the main character. Kevin is surprised that so many came for one rat. The hero begins to call the dungeons of the Hwarang Guild miserable, and satirically calls the guild very large. Suddenly, one of the guild members grabs him by the head and slams him into the asphalt. And he says to watch his language. Kevin rises and intercepts the hand of his offender. Nora's foot hits him in the stomach and he flies off. The girl came closer to the lying guy, swung her leg and trampled the guy's head into the ground. The main character was amazed at the girl's speed, and the girl, without removing her feet from the guy's head, gave him advice not to become arrogant, especially on the territory of the guild. If a guy wanted to live longer, then he should not forget about this advice. The guild members left, and Kevin continued to lie there for a while, realizing that he had not received anything like this for a long time. Having told John about what happened, he was shocked by the fight with the famous Nora. The main character asked the young man if he knew anything about the girl. He replied that the red-haired person was one of the 10 A-rank awakened ones of their country. The Hwarang Guild is one of the top 3, along with KN and Hammer. They had enormous influence in politics and economics. John could not understand what his interlocutor had done in the dungeon, that such people had noticed him. And Kevin felt unpleasant about what he had done. He said that he could defeat the Hwarang army if he regained his strength. The young man was only surprised at his friend's pride. Of course, Kevin would be at a disadvantage if he fought anyone outside the dungeon, even at a high level, and the necromancer's skill is not unlimited. Suddenly, the main character takes out a package and hands it to John. The gift contains perfume, after which the guy hands the money to the young man from whom he borrowed it. Kevin handed over much more money than he took. The young man with glasses asks to give back as much as they took from him, but the main character insists. The extra money, as the adult guy explained, is rent. John did not understand whether his friend was going to continue living here. Kevin could not move in with his mother, because her house was too small for three. He would take up space in the schoolboy's house until he could buy his own place. The main character did not understand what the problem was and offered to give even more money. John noticed his friend's new phone and asked to take a closer look. The young man was shocked that the phone was red. Such phones were expensive. They were made of bloodstones, Kevin began to tell, as a result of what events he got it. The memory of Kevin holding the customer by the collar came back to mind again, and that life was at stake in this event. John saw the bank account and admired the number of zeros on it. The main character did not understand why, and asked to give the phone back. Kevin started to get angry. Instead of $4 million, they deposited $40 million into his account. The main character visited the cafe where Liam works. The dark-haired guy couldn't understand why Liam was asking him how he was doing, because they had seen each other a couple of hours ago. Kevin said in a menacing voice that he asked for $4 million, not 400. Liam fell to his knees because he was afraid that he would kill him too, like those guys from the dungeon. The modest guy promised to repay the entire debt and asked for more time. People began to pay attention to this situation. The main character did not quite understand this behavior and asked the guy to sit on a chair. Liam said that he was really sorry that he couldn't get 400 million won yet, but if he was given time, he would definitely be able to. Kevin was confused by such a huge number and asked again. Actually, the main character spoke about 4 million won, but they didn't understand him. He looked again at Liam's frightened face and thought that modern children are very generous and should be taken advantage of. The guy folded his hands on the table, and with a sweet smile asked how long he still had to wait for the new amount. Kevin was walking through the park and looked to the side. There he saw Liam, who invited him to go for a ride in the car. Kevin asked why the guy was so happy on the first day of working for him, to which he replied that servants could be happy too. It turns out that Kevin came up with something to get Liam to repay his debt in a different way. Liam offered to be the main character's manager. He could handle dungeon selection, booking, selling bloodstones. He could do all of this for him, even drive the dark-haired guy around. The main character realized that he wanted to pay off the debt with work because there was no money. Liam said that the guy understood him correctly. The guy with a mysterious grin agreed to such repayment of the debt, but they set a deadline of 1 year. They also promised to share because it would be too difficult for free. Liam was very happy about this and thanked his new boss from the bottom of his heart. Kevin looked at his driver and realized how lucky he was because he wanted to return the excess, but in the end, he received a servant. The main character asked his servant to do a good job, and 10% of the profits would go to Liam. The main character asked the modest guy if he had found the dungeon he was talking about. Kevin asked for a 3-star dungeon with the largest number of monsters. Such a dungeon was Entrance 3. There was a swarm of Reiki. Entering the dungeon, the main character told his partner to keep his eyes open. A board appeared in front of Kevin on which he could choose to spend all his points in control. The number of skeletons he controlled has grown to 19. The main hardcore run is about to begin. Skeleton soldiers began attacking the Rocky with their makeshift swords. During this time, Liam managed to collect all the bloodstones from above. Kevin praised his partner's work, but he was surprised that his friend managed to clear the dungeon so quickly. Usually a Rocky dungeon raid took 2 hours, but here it took just 15 minutes and alone. Kevin sat down to rest a little after working so quickly. He reached level 7 and gained some achievement points. Having looked at the abilities in a little more detail, he saw that the summoning of a skeleton mage, which he could learn at level 10, would be nice if he opened them in the near future. Liam said that everything was ready. He found the Stone of Return. Only 27 minutes had passed since entering the dungeons. Kevin paid for 4 hours, which meant they could do it 7 more times. He told Liam to get ready quickly. The Bloodstone sales department charged Liam 53.2 million won to his account, which left him extremely shocked. More than 50 million in half an hour. At this rate, it will soon be 400 million. His share will be 40 million. He went to peer-to-peer dungeons for 2 months and earned about 30 million, and then 40 million in 1 day. Liam told Kevin that earning that much for one was amazing. He called the main character a truly great man. The hero asked his partner not to fuss because there were still 7 such approaches left. Liam believed it was a godsend opportunity to become Kevin's manager. In the office, a young man who was calmly making coffee for himself receives a call. He picks up the phone and introduces himself as Captain George, asking what happened. They wanted to report to him about the morning trip of 2 guys to the dungeon, where they bought tickets for 4 hours, but there was something wrong with them. The guy thought that they had died and did not see anything strange in this, but the situation was different. It was about the time spent in the dungeon. Their first raid took 30 minutes, and now they finish in 11 minutes. This time, they only spent 9 minutes, 47 seconds. The man was shocked by such a short time. He was asked to find out a little more information about them. He was informed that the guys were F rank, which made the man even more surprised. He asked the subscriber to be in touch so that after new circumstances were clarified, he would be called back. According to the data that the employee found, one of the guys was registered yesterday, and the other just 2 months ago. 2 newcomers cleared a 3-star dungeon in 10 minutes. This is nonsense. There was a big mistake in determining the rank because it was a minimum of C rank. Those awakened with C rank abilities are likely to become high ranking. He had not seen such potential for a long time. They looked at the guys through the TV screen and discussed their trip to their dungeon. After Kevin, they began to discuss Liam, a special fire magician, because in their opinion, the main character had the main power. Nora was asked what she thought about the necromancer. She, of course, thought that the guy was unusual, but not that unusual. He must have at least a C rank. The company had 2 assumptions. Either the guy was hiding his abilities, or he was growing at a crazy pace. Nora said she doesn't remember awakenings growing so fast anymore. But her interlocutor remembered such an awakened guy who rose from F to A rank. His potential was a secret until he reached first place in South Korea. It was David. Nora asked not to compare these 2 people. The Hwarang Guildmaster William asked to bring Kevin to find out this man. Liam sat on the floor surrounded by dead rakia and cut them up. He thought that money is of course good, but so he can move his skates, he will be the first to die when extracting bloodstones. Liam suggested that Kevin take a break, and he jokingly said that his modest friend was quickly exhausted. But the main character still agreed to rest. They were very refreshed by the water. They had 1 hour and 12 minutes of time left. According to Kevin's calculations, he had already received about 400 million won, which should be enough to buy a house for his mother and little sister. The main character stood up and told Liam to collect stones while he protected him. The guy ran into battle at high speed. He ran past the fighting skeleton soldiers while simultaneously killing monsters. At some point, a huge brandy wanted to attack him from behind, but the hero manages to turn around and kill the huge creature. The character level increased to 10. The killed monsters should have been enough for points. Kevin was confused by the fact that Alphen classes were determined by reaching level 10, but he was already a necromancer. The notification above it highlighted the class definition. As a result, he was given the warrior class and a bonus, but Kevin was not happy because this could become a problem. It was more profitable to be a magician, since the characteristics overlapped with necromancy. If he had known that this would happen, he would have used magic rather than brandishing a crowbar. The reward for the class was displayed. The main character didn't really know what it was. A warrior's weapon appeared in front of him, which looked like an ordinary steel pipe. His weapon was called a steel staff. The guy was wondering what it could become in the future. He also received a necromancer bonus, a demon seal catalyst. This is a magic crystal that necromancers receive upon reaching certain levels. 7 crystals inside are great familiars incomparable to skeleton soldiers. The guy was wondering who he would get this time, and opened the seal. Bibi appeared in front of him, a little bright girl with wings. She immediately asked the question of where her master had gone. The girl rushed into Kevin's arms because he was her master, with words about boredom without him. The main character was surprised that Bibi did not stay on Alphen. It turns out that all the familiars after his departure were placed in the seal space. The girl smelled a strange smell and asked about its origin. The smell came from dead rakia. These stench were similar to the smell of Threnet subjects from Alphen. Kevin was amazed by this fact. Threnet is a demon who invaded Alphen from a mysterious dimension. He destroyed 90% of the population. Kevin never fought him, but his subjects often invaded Allendal. Apparently, Threnet has now begun to invade the Earth. Kevin thought he had escaped Hell, but Hell is hot on his heels. At the exit from the dungeon, a representative of the Hwarang Guild was waiting for the 2 guys. The representative asked where the guys were now, to which his interlocutor replied that they came in 8 minutes ago and should return soon. But the interlocutor said that he did not call them simpletons, because they earned more than 400 million won. With such power, the guy would also like to clear dungeons of monsters. As soon as Kevin and Liam left, George, the representative, approached them and asked for their time. Their dialogue should have only taken a couple of minutes. Kevin refused and walked past with the words that he was already taking up time, and there was no need to ask. George thought the main character was crazy and apologized for beating around the bush. Getting straight to the point, the representative said that the Hammer Guild wanted to recruit them. Kevin turned around and began to leave, saying that he was not interested. George assumed that the guy simply did not know about their guild. Kevin clarified whether their company was one of the 3 best guilds. The representative realized that he still knew about it. In the ranks of their guild, according to him, there are the most powerful awakened ones. If he wanted to join them, they would provide the best support. Kevin said that he was not in a very good mood and asked not to be annoying. Kevin's little sister was running across the large lawn near the beautiful house. The main character's mother was delighted with the house, but did not understand how her son would acquire such housing. He told his mother that he was awakened and that he had a lot of money in his account. The mother was afraid for her son because it was very dangerous. She had already lost Kevin's father and was worried about him, but he reassured her that he was not so weak. Mia happily ran up and asked about the possibility of getting a dog if they ended up living in this house. The guy patted his little sister on the head and told his mother that this house was compensation for hard times. Mom still looked at her son with concern. Kevin walked along a deserted street without people and ordered Bibi to get out. Suddenly, a cat comes out in front of him. Kevin thinks that this animal is Bibi. He took her in his arms. It really turned out to be Bibi. She said that she could not accept her true form, and therefore she had to find a small organism. The guy couldn't understand why she could only take on her true forms in dungeons. He asked if she had learned anything about the energy of Tranit, but unfortunately there was nothing new. Bibi said that the environment around her smelled pleasantly of peace. The main character realized that the energy of Tranit had not yet affected this world. They called Kevin from behind and were surprised at his concern for stray cats. Kevin turned around. The head of the Hwarang Guild, William, was standing there. He asked to give him some time. Liam sat on the couch and realized that he could not understand his partner Kevin. He remembered the moment in the car when he asked about the reason why the main character rejected the guild's offer of an alliance. He replied that it was because he hated taking orders from anyone. Liam laughed because even the all-powerful Hammer Guild could not compare with his partner. The guy understood that in fact the reason was not so important, because he would soon be able to drive the car he dreamed of. All he had to do was trust and follow the protagonist. A BMW representative came to Liam and asked if he wanted to sign a contract right now. The guy agreed. In the cafe, William began the dialogue by apologizing to Kevin for yesterday's run-in with Nora. Nora is William's younger sister with an explosive temper. She is very important to the Hwarang Guild, so the man was ready to compensate for any tricky situations. Kevin said that this was not necessary and asked about the purpose of the visit. William said that he watched the guy's success. The progress was stunning. This was impossible for a simple F rank. He believed that the main character was a couple of steps away from the highest rank. Kevin asked about the guild's desire to join them. This is exactly what William wanted. He asked to join them. He would provide him with the best conditions for development. Kevin inquired about transferring the role of the head of the guild if he could defeat the leader. The head was not surprised by the guy's self-confidence, but said that he was not holding the post because of his rank, because he only had a B. Kevin stood up and said that he had lost interest in the conversation. William said that he could tell why dungeons appeared on Earth. It's been 5 years since the underground earthquake, and they still haven't been able to find out anything about the underground. But there are more of them, and the monsters in them are stronger, but this does not frighten humanity. It has plunged headlong into making money on bloodstones. William was sure that the world would sink into chaos if things continued like this. Gathering the Awakened to stop what was happening was his only goal. The leader hoped that Kevin would trust them with his power. At the Hammer Guild, the leader was in a terrible mood all day. He was informed that the duo of Kevin and Liam had booked Gate 6 of the station. The head did not understand why they were ruining his mood by talking about this man so early. This dungeon was a 4-star dungeon. Out of shock, the leader spat the coffee back into the mug and ran to the employee. F rank cannot enter a dungeon above 4 stars. It would be understandable if they went as minors or support. It was clear that they were newbies due to booking dungeons without basic knowledge. But what kind of abilities do they apparently have if they are going to clear this dungeon? The leader asked if they had a 4-star dungeon nearby. It turned out that they did. It was quite close to that dungeon. The leader asked to cancel all reservations for this dungeon. The leader hoped that this time the duet would be theirs. Liam decides to give his partner a ride in his new car and asks if he likes it. But Kevin did not know such a car and could not appreciate it. Liam thought that he had crawled out of the woods. The dungeon guard couldn't understand how an F rank could clear a 4-star dungeon with just 2 people. Liam tried to calm the man down. They did not ask to take responsibility for them, but only to let them go down, to which the guard suggested jumping into the river rather than committing suicide in the dungeon. The guard did not want to let them inside in any way. Liam told Kevin that he was unable to arrange a pass. The main character said that he didn't see anything wrong with this. He would need to undergo a reassessment tomorrow, and suggested looking for 3-star hotels nearby. The head of the Hammer greeted the young men and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. He offered to help if something happened to the guys. Kevin chuckled at the word fate. He asked how the head wanted to help him get inside. He took the guys to their guild's 4-star dungeon and told them that it was all theirs. Kevin thought it was too good to be true and asked if they would have to pay for it, to which he was told that this was a gesture of goodwill. The head was going to resolve the problems with their ranks and allowed them to clear the dungeon at their pleasure. The main character agreed on the condition that everything was true. The head asked the guys to wait. He had to bring the guys some gift. He opened the trunk of his own car and said that of course the guys would have to pay for everything. He did not ask for anything in return, but a favor must be returned with a favor, because if food is shared with you, it's natural for a person to share in return. Kevin, in the eyes of the head, seemed to be a fairly strong awakened one, and not a 24-year-old child. He believed that the guy was already hooked. The guard of this dungeon told Kevin that he had changed. Yesterday it was scary to even talk to him. The main character said that he was just in a bad mood. All his thoughts yesterday were occupied with Tranit, but today he is in a better mood. The guard offered him a drink after today's raid. The guard suggested this so that when Kevin was drunk, he could slip him a contract. He offered Kevin a familiar place. The main character wanted to know where it was. Liam understood that the dialogue between the guard and the guy was a waste of time, because no matter how much you suck up to him, he still won't back down. When the head came with the gifts, the guys were no longer there, and he asked where they had gone. He found out that they went to the dungeon. The guard said that the gifts could be given back later. The leader threw the gifts, survival kits, on the floor and asked the guard if he knew if the F-ranks knew about the dangers inside the 4-star dungeon. For such dungeons, a D-rank team with a C-rank leader is recommended. With such a speed of clearing 3-star dungeons, he should be able to defeat the monsters from this dungeon. But from 4-star to 6-star, dungeons are different from low-level ones. If you go there without information and a survival kit, even a high-ranking one will not return alive. The head thought that the guys were finished. They literally sent them to the grave. Having quickly killed all the monsters, the guys were surprised that the 4-star ones were so simple and began to look for the return stone. But it wasn't where they were, so they decided to go back and look again. Kevin couldn't figure out what the hell was going on, and Liam noticed that the entrance had disappeared. In front of them, they noticed a huge portal. Kevin wondered why it was so easy. It turns out the real game was just beginning. They entered the portal and found themselves in another dimension. Kevin looked at Liam, who was naked, and asked about his strange actions. Then he looked at himself and saw that he was also standing naked. It turns out that it was only their bodies that moved, and he said that it was already like a 4-star dungeon. Kevin knew how to control the space and got them clothes. Liam was amazed at the range of his friend's capabilities. The main character was at level 10, thanks to the transferred bonuses. His characteristics were higher than those of a regular level 10. But a 4-star dungeon is still dangerous. There may be strong enemies that Kevin cannot fight face to face. On this occasion, the guy decided to learn such techniques as a jump, a charge, and a strong blow, and the passage began. Liam heard the rustling of branches and the sound of footsteps and warned his partner that something was approaching. A level 31 crocodile monster ran out of the bushes. The main character wanted to test how strong he was. The head of the hammer and the guard stood at the entrance to the dungeon and worried about the guys. The barrier still did not disappear, and time in such places lasts twice as fast. Therefore, almost 2 hours passed there. The security guard wondered how long the guys would hold out and whether they could at least cope with the crocodile. Portals in high-level dungeons did not allow materials from Earth to pass through. The only thing that could be carried through them was things from other dimensions. Even if the guys could cope with the monster, the main problem is the lack of food and water. If it's difficult to survive empty-handed in the Amazon jungle, then even more so in the dungeon. Meanwhile, Kevin and Liam prepared their own food and ate happily. Crocodile meat has always been considered a delicacy. According to Kevin, the senior partner handed the beer to Liam, saying that it goes well with kebab. The young man agreed with this. A lot of time passed after the guys went inside. The guard suggested the possibility of the death of both guys. The head did not lose heart, but remembered another danger: the swamps. The swamps that appeared from time to time in the jungle were a death sentence for melee fighters. Legs would get stuck, and hoko monkeys and swamp anacondas would attack at the same time. Liam drew Kevin's attention to those same monkeys above. The guard and the head continued to worry, because as they thought, only Liam had the ability for long-range combat. Kevin surprisingly acquired a range skill related to fire and dealt with the enemy. The men continued to sit on the steps at the entrance and began to have a snack. Meanwhile, 4 hours had passed since the entrance. The captain didn't know if Kevin and Liam would be able to choose, because not only were the monsters dangerous at such levels, there were a lot of unfamiliar plants, animals, and insects there. If guys eat something unfamiliar, it could be poisonous. Liam found a tropical fruit and almost started to eat it, when a friend told him that if they were raw, he would die. The guy immediately spat out the bitten part. Kevin knew so much about these places because he had lived in them for 20 years, but he was not going to tell his partner about it. The guard became interested in the reason why the head so wanted to get Kevin into its ranks, although the guild had no need for this. The captain said that in 5 years he had never been deceived by his own eyes. Stories about his recruitment of rising stars were famous, and I remembered one of them. The head believed that Kevin would be cooler than that star. The captain would not have been surprised by the refusal to join their guild. He only wanted the guys to return. because their death would be a huge loss for humanity. The security guard offered to pray for the guys. The head did not listen and only said that the mining of the return stone is a strong opponent. The captain was worried that they would die after all. Liam noticed the stone of return ahead of the path and ran towards it. Kevin managed to stop him in time and show him the stakes at the bottom of the cliff into which his partner would fall. Liam couldn't understand where the main character was looking. He looked at the terrible monsters in front of them. Kevin did not expect such a turn because these monsters were Alphen orcs. The population of Alphen consisted of a huge number of races of people, elves, dwarves, beastmen, even orcs and others. But what they were doing there, the main character could not understand and asked directly in their language. Everyone was shocked that the guy could speak another language. The leader asked the main character how he knew their language. He said it didn't matter and repeated the question. They were defeated by Tranit when the balance was upset. He became the master of everything, and they were on Earth because of a contract with him. According to the contract, Earth was to become their new home. Tranit didn't even own the Earth, which means the contract didn't make sense. Kevin asked the orcs for their last words. Alphen's warriors ran to attack. The guard shared with the leader his good feeling, because a full 6 hours and 20 minutes had passed. Suddenly the barrier disappeared. Both men were happily surprised. The only thing the captain wanted was for the guys to return alive. But they didn't come out. The guard thought it was the end. They were about to return, but they saw how the guys began to climb up from the dungeon. Kevin couldn't understand why they were so happy to see them. The guys were already driving home by car. They asked for information as gifts and left them survival kits. Kevin asked Liam to take away the crocodile skin next time. Because it was expensive, the guy did not like this request. From the car window, Kevin noticed John and asked him to stop the car for a while. He greeted John and asked if he was on a date. The answer was no. The girl and Kevin turned out to know each other. Important issues were discussed in the office of the Hammer Guild. Another employee came in. The guild captain left pointedly, which was not clear to the man who entered the room. The director had no idea why he behaved this way. The head wanted the necromancer to be made vice president of the company. The director did not understand this. The man who came offered to listen to the head, but he had recently brought only mediocre people and had lost confidence in himself. The director called the presence of the guy who came in real luck. Then there was a conversation about affairs in America. Some rumors turned out to be true. The titanium defeated everyone. They showed a girl emerging from the dungeon. She was watched by several people at the same time on the TV screen. She did not speak the language we were used to and constantly uttered an unintelligible word. She could be the key to finding out the secrets of the dungeons. It was necessary to somehow get her to talk. 5 years have passed since the dungeons appeared. They finally found at least one clue. It belonged to the Titan Guild. The girl who was locked up repeated Kevin's name non-stop. John was doing his homework and starting to worry about his sister. Kevin was amazed that Kaya was John's sister. He said that even though 5 years had passed, the girl remained very sweet. He told Liam that Kaya was the most popular girl in school. Half the boys were in love with her. Kevin was no exception. She was smart, sweet, and got along with everyone. The main character became interested in why the girl was wearing hats. She said that she just really likes to wear them. Kevin asked the girl to take off her headdress, but she refused. Liam did not understand how his friend could ask such questions from a girl. He came to the conclusion that the guy was not in a relationship, and he liked the girl opposite. Liam decided to save his friend and suggested playing a drinking game. After a while, the guy merrily sang and drank to the music. Kevin told Liam to sit down, or he would use force. By that time, Kaya was already very drunk and was sleeping right at the table. Suddenly, her hat falls off, and all the people start looking at the sleeping girl. Kaya had a huge burn on her head, which she tried to hide. The guy covered her with a hat and called her cute again. The next morning, the girl woke up at John's house. The brothers said that Kevin brought her because she drank a lot. John was preparing hangover soup for his sister. The girl went to wash her face, noticed in the mirror that she was wearing a Panama hat, and realized that she had slept right in it. She received this scar 5 years ago during a dungeon break. When she was attacked by a monster, she did not want Kevin to see her like this. The teacher in the class asked who should be on duty. Kevin raised his hand, followed by Kaya. They were cleaning the classroom together. When they were already closing the office, she reminded them not to forget anything. Kaya said Kevin is quiet like her brother. She was glad that at least by the second quarter we were able to talk, and suggested we say hello now. She turned to face Kevin and wanted to say something in his ear. It turned out that it was all a dream. The main character woke up, and Bibi woke him up. Liam and Kevin met. The necromancer asked if his partner had found a 4-star dungeon. There are very few such dungeons, and medium and large guilds immediately book them. Everything was too difficult. Kevin was trying to come up with a plan for further action and decided to call one of his contacts. The subscriber said that he would arrive soon and asked to wait a little. Liam asked who his interlocutor was calling, and he called him a generous tree. A minute later, the head of the Hammer ran into the cafe and apologized for the long wait, asking what exactly they needed from him. The captain told the guys that they were looking for 4-star dungeons on the forum, and it was only good for beginners. He asked me to wait a second and took advantage of the guild's exclusive program. Any guild support team specializes in selecting good dungeons. The captain thought that the guys spent the night in a cafe and noted the possibility of spending the night in any hotels when joining the guild. The head continued to advertise the guild and said that he could provide the house for free. Kevin played along. The captain turned the laptop towards the main character and showed him the dungeons that were free for today. They chose one of the dungeons, approached it, and confirmed the reservation. The captain said that Kevin would be able to go inside soon, but first would he like a cup of tea. At the same time, the head will be able to give him information before they go inside. This would be useful. The man said that the upcoming information was extremely confidential, so the guy would wait in anticipation. On the next side of the street, Liam noticed that the dungeon had gone to 0. The head asked to urgently contact the Dungeon Guard Guild. Reporters arrived at the resettled dungeon, and people gathered around it. The head told Kevin that dungeons come in 3 states: mine, 0, and breakthrough. The dungeons they used to go to were mines. Cleared dungeons with summoned monsters. The awakened ones go there to mine bloodstones. The mines exist for about 2-3 months, but when this stage comes to an end, the mines are reset and a new dungeon appears. As they saw, entrance 6 of Seoul University Station had been reset, and now many guilds wanted to get there first. Kevin clarified that it was not the presence of the owner of the dungeon. He wanted to become a new one. The head hoped that he did not even think about trying. The monsters of the first raid, according to the captain, are much more dangerous than ordinary mine monsters, and the guild should take care of this. Kevin rephrased it as if the guild wanted to take the dungeon for themselves. The captain did not mean that. The regulations did not seem to prohibit entry, but this could be done after measuring the energy. The energy that is released by the dungeon during zeroing is necessary in order to assign the dungeon a class from 1 to 6 stars. C rank for 4 stars, B rank for 5 stars, A rank attack troops were the only ones who were eligible to enter 6-star dungeons. Kevin remembered that he was told that he was C rank, which meant he could enter the 4-star. The dungeon turned out to be 5-star. The captain suggested that the guy abandon this idea. A detachment of Cinnabar was walking along the street towards the updated dungeon. Kevin recognized Nora and decided to annoy her and went to her with open arms. Nora recognized the guy and said that he didn't belong there because the dungeon was 5-star. The guy complimented the girl's equipment. The guy touched the girl's protective devices, and this made her angry because no one allowed her to touch. Liam was returning from the store and could not understand the reason for the crowd. The girl pushed the guy away, and he accidentally fell into the dungeon. Everyone was shocked by the guy's fall. It was very bad. Kevin found himself in the desert and was not impressed. He took a step and exploded on the spot. The main character flew up high. A huge sandworm appeared under Kevin. He couldn't understand why they said that the 5-star dungeon was on a different level. He made a weapon summon. He couldn't defeat the monster the first time, but he succeeded the second time. He rejoiced in the fact that he had a level in a row, clearing out the orcs. Without this, there would have been big problems. Strange balls rolled towards the hero, which emitted a strange green gas when they burst. He used the Bone Wall ability and was able to defend himself from them. The hero was poisoned by gas, but managed to recover with a potion. The guy now began to understand why 5-star dungeons are on a different level. One of the guys from the Cinnabar squad was infuriated by the fact that, in his words, Kevin was chilling below. Liam stood up for his friend's honor and said that he was taking over the dungeon there and not chilling out. The interlocutor made the guy very angry by saying that his friend was holed up somewhere downstairs. The captain pulled Liam away from the guy and asked if he believed Kevin was capable of clearing the dungeon. The guy had no doubt that the guy would survive. The head asked to talk about the skills of the main character, but the guy refused. The head realized how stubborn Liam was, that he still hadn't said anything. In any case, Kevin's survival would mean the emergence of a new A rank in South Korea. Kevin raised his level many times while fighting vile monsters. He needed another level for a new call. The hero looked at the desert and tried to find at least something in it. A little later, he noticed a stone village. At first glance, there was no one in this village. He thought it was abandoned. When suddenly he is attacked by a strange creature under the name of Nagi, he asked the purpose of the invasion of his temple. Kevin said that this is not the temple of this creature at all, but the temple of Arya. Nagi was surprised and asked how he knew about Arya. He said that it was impossible not to know the Alphan goddess of divination. He did not understand why Arya's followers invaded Earth. Did Tranit and Arya really become accomplices? Nagi asked not to insult the goddess. They teamed up with Tranit to punish the cult. The cult was created to punish the traitor who fled to Earth, the blue-eyed priestess. Kevin said that he does not care about the priestess. He will not allow her to get to Earth. He protects her. They are a temple and a goddess. Naga said that he would use all his strength to get through the guy to Earth. The creatures had the ability of invisibility. Kevin said that pissing people off is his thing. The hero had not sensed their presence before. Apparently, their invisibility skill was higher than his detection skill. Ordinary skeleton soldiers could not cope with the enemy. He increased the summoning of skeletons to level 20. There was a fierce battle. The fate of the battle was not predetermined. The enemy's attacks made him worry. The difference in levels was significant. They prevailed with numbers and superiority in close combat. They also covered each other using the terrain. Neither Bibi nor the skeletons could do anything, and although the skeletons could help, they were destroyed faster than they got rid of the scum. He had no chance then. He decided to use a secret method. The news said that more than 10 hours had passed since Kevin fell into the dungeon, but the barrier was still standing. The fact that he was still alive could be called a miracle. The head of the Hammer Guild decided that Kevin went there for glory and decided to reprimand the captain upon his return. The captain offered Liam something to eat while they waited for Kevin. The best time to capture a 5-star dungeon was 12 o'clock. Liam understood how hard it was for his partner, but through his tears he began to eat ramen. Nagi did not understand how the main character was going to destroy the temple with this. Kevin said that 5-star dungeons annoyed him and used a sealed devil stone right under Nagi's nose due to his level up. A huge sand golem with Kevin on its back appeared in front of Nagi. He ordered the golem to sweep away everyone in its path. Nagi was the last survivor of this massacre, the main character grinning at the weight of his outnumbered opponent. The creature got angry and wanted to attack the main character, but he used his hammer skill. He activated the whirlwind ability with his hammer. Nagi lay bloody in front of Kevin. The guy called him a stubborn brat. The creature could not understand how the Earthlings got someone so strong. Nagi turned into a snake and began to attack Kevin. With one swing of his hammer, the main character breaks through the head of his opponent, who has been talking too much. Kevin left the dungeon. Liam threw his food and ran towards his surviving friend. The main character drew attention to Nora and told her that it was better not to jostle in front of dangerous dungeons, as they say you could die there. Kevin began to be photographed around the paparazzi, and the 11th A rank appeared in Korea. The head of the Hammer Guild heard about the incredible return of a guy from a dungeon alive on TV. The head was surprised by the captain's intuition. If he brought Kevin, then Hammer would become the first guild with 3 A ranks in South Korea. William, the head of Hwarang, told the minister that everything was going according to plan, that a large number of people were involved, not a single mistake had been made, and all preparations had been completed. The minister expected this. He left this matter to William and said that there was no need to worry about a generous reward. Looking at the phone, the head of Hwarang found out that Kevin had an A rank. He remembered their dialogue. He thought about the secret of the main character, and that the guy must end up in Hwarang at any cost. William nicely asked the minister for a favor to involve someone in the matter. John was prevented from doing his homework by loud exclamations from the TV. He asked Liam and Kevin to turn it down. The schoolboy asked if the guys were worried about the journalists outside. They said that they would disperse sooner or later. Kevin asked John to go out and buy him a couple of tangerines and 2 bags for Liam. The schoolboy initially refused, but when he saw the amount of change he could keep for himself, he agreed. Kevin's mother called and said that journalists continued to hover near their house. The main character was furious. He found out that he had received a summons to join the army. Kevin didn't like it terribly. Things shouldn't go that way. He proposed killing Kim Jong-un with absolutely serious intent. He wants to unite Korea until he was called. Liam tried to restrain his partner. Liam did not believe in the unification of countries after the death of a leader. Kevin couldn't imagine any other way. For him, it was the best option to avoid joining the army. John came into the room and asked what the guys were doing. The schoolboy did not understand why this bothered Kevin so much. The awakened one clearly could not be a private. Usually they were enrolled in a special division, but there was an alternative. The guys became interested. An alternative is to join a certified guild and help eliminate monsters at the request of the Ministry of Defense. John wanted to join a big guild. The worker happily told Captain Hammer that he had done something. He could not understand where so much joy came from. It turns out Kevin made an appointment with the employee to talk about the guild. They decided that this was his way of joining their guild. The captain was glad that his efforts were not in vain. He was proud that he had not lost his grip and went to report the incident to President Hammer. He entered the office and was asked about Kevin from the threshold. The head told the director that the guy had contacted them. They happily shook hands. He suggested giving the captain the position of vice president. With him, the guild would prosper. Arriving at a meeting with Kevin, at first he could not believe what he heard and asked again. Kevin was going to create his own guild. The captain thought that the guy wanted to join their guild, but he was not interested. A company employee who arrived with the captain inquired about the conditions of possible work. Kevin offered them a 100 million won increase to their current salaries. But the captain, being an ordinary person, joined one of the best guilds, went through many difficulties to achieve his position. It was not about money. The main character promised the men that the new guild would be larger than the previous one, and offered them positions as founders. The employee was seriously thinking about transferring, because we were talking about an A-rank fighter who could clear a 5-star dungeon single-handedly. The growth of the guild was guaranteed. If he had remained in the guild, it was not clear what position he could have reached. Indeed, judging by the clearing of the dungeons, Kevin's guild had a bright future ahead of him. Unlike the Hammer, no matter how much effort the captain put in, it would be difficult to become a department head or director, beating the founders. The captain informed his interlocutor about his decision to also transfer. He had to take a risk to take a higher position. They both took out from the pockets of their jackets a letter of resignation, which they had written in advance a long time ago. But in the company, they were greeted with a holiday celebrating the appointment of the captain as vice president. Everyone applauded. This needed to be stopped before it got worse. The director called the man a genius who completed incredible negotiations and asked him to clap for him. The head wanted to address him, but the director interrupted him and asked him to tell all the details for the celebration of his promotion. In the banquet hall, the leader and employee discussed the plan for further action. After all, it was not the most opportune moment to talk about resignation. The employee handed the captain his resignation letter and asked him to accept it. At first, the man did not understand anything. According to him, one of them should have left. He asked to accept the statement. The man called him a scoundrel. The man wanted to go after the scoundrel, but the director managed to grab him by the hand. The head wanted to hear the details. He asked him to tell everything without hesitation. The man bowed to the boss and apologized for his failure to recruit Kevin. The director was furious and did not want to believe it. The director said that an ordinary apology would not be enough, threatened with dismissal, and recalled the resources spent on this matter. The captain said he would accept responsibility for this and placed his resignation letter on the table. The director said that he was crazy, that he was not a civil servant, and his dismissal would not change anything. He suggested that the guy was running away from the mess he had created. At first, the captain could not understand what they wanted from him. He finished with the formalities, turned around and left. At the exit, a former employee, Michael, was waiting for him with a car and told him to jump in, that he would go nowhere without him. Kevin happily greeted the new members of his Ardell Guild. They shook hands and said a few parting words. The captain said that you could communicate with them without formalities. They were going to make the guild world famous. The captain asked to call him Alexander. The leader, Alexander, had all the organizational issues. He was told to start preparing. Kevin suggested celebrating the opening of the guild and the hiring of new employees. Alexander was surprised at how quickly the meeting was completed. The main character did not understand what else needed to be discussed, because he had already come up with a name. Alexander thought for a second that he might have made a mistake with his choice, and suggested skipping the dating stage and deciding a few things first. Kevin had no idea what exactly needed to be decided. Alexander suggested discussing the conditions for booking and raiding the dungeon of the 6th entrance of Seoul University. Kevin at first did not understand why this was needed, but it quickly dawned on him. Also, to found a guild, 5 people were required. They had 4 so far. Kevin and Liam began to think about who to take. They suggested John, but he was underage, so the option was dropped. But he remembered who he could invite. This person was a telephone salesman. A couple of days later, the employees set up the guild office, praising each other's contributions to it. The phone salesman, George, yesterday thought it was some kind of scam. The main character who beat him for the phone is now a famous person. Kevin was Korea's 11th A rank, although it was still unofficial, but he was already one of the strongest in history. Everyone was talking about him, but George was only thinking about good working conditions, because the business was already bringing in a little money. Liam wondered how George and Kevin were related and suggested that they were relatives or friends. Kevin came and praised the good repairs that were done by the guys. Alexander asked if they had finished describing the dungeon raid. It was almost finished. Liam is the only one who had to work hard. There was a lot to write, even if it was a successful raid of a 5-star dungeon. The time had come for the first meeting of the guild. The most important thing had to be decided. There were few people in the guild, so it was necessary to distribute responsibilities so that the work went better. Everyone had to say the desired place. Everyone fell silent. Kevin asked Alexander about the usual positions in the guilds. There were 2 categories for awakened and ordinary workers. Leadership positions were usually given to awakened ones. What was really important were the details of their contract, such as the rate and percentage of dungeon raids and the like. Liam started talking about his work experience, but the main character interrupted him and appointed him as a manager. As a loot manager, the joy on Liam's face quickly disappeared. Departments in guilds include accounting, administrative, sales, support, and management departments. Alexander became the general manager, and he was delighted. Michael wanted to become the head of the support department, and he got it. Kevin turned his attention to George and did not understand what he had left in the office. Then we started talking about new workers, because as the guild grows, the number of awakened ones increases, so they will need more workers. Kevin said that he didn't see the point in having a large number of employees. He went on raids to get away from the army. Alexander was shocked that this was his reason for organizing the guild. He could have simply joined another guild. Then Alexander would have become the head of the department and lived happily ever after. Kevin nevertheless agreed to recruit new employees at Alexander's insistence. The work of the support department was now his responsibility. Kaya lay on the bed and scrolled through the news. They were all in Kevin. She began to daydream, but pushed the thoughts away in time. The girl's neighbors entered the room and asked her to put on her hat because she was not alone in the room. The girls began to discuss that they needed to move out so as not to be scared of Kaya. The girl heard all this. She was very offended. John decided to meet his sister after work. He was going to have dinner and have a good time with her. She was a little late. He accidentally overheard a dialogue between two girls when they were talking about Kaya, about how beautiful she was and how she used to pick up all the guys before, and now everyone is running away from her. Meanwhile, Kevin and Liam were in the dungeon of the 6th entrance of Seoul University. They collected valuables, but ordinary items remained. They had already received everything useful from this dungeon and decided to leave. When Kevin left the dungeon, everyone was once again surprised by the time it took to clear it. George ran up to the guys. Director Alexander asked him to take the guys to the office when they finished. Alexander went to the office on general business, but did not have time to finish. The journalists pushed the guy aside, make their way closer to Kevin and ask questions. Microphones were pulled towards the guy's face. He did not answer questions. George began to drive journalists away from the main character, telling them to send an interview request to the guild. Otherwise, they would be held accountable to the law. The guy remembered all those reporters' faces and would keep that in mind when he received an interview request, because he was definitely unhappy with the current situation. George turned to Kevin and said that he would bring the car now. Liam asked where the main character and George met, and he told a true story about the phone in the store. The guy ran after the car with the thought that he needed to stay in this guild at any cost. He misunderstood everything at first and had already closed the store. 3 days later, Kevin was on his phone, scrolling through the news, and saw another top A rank. But his thoughts on this matter were dispelled by Liam. He asked what the main character was eating. The hero was eating a strengthening stone which increases stats, and offered it to his partner. He shared the stones because Liam needed to get stronger, to carry more things and become faster, stronger. John came to Kevin to have a serious talk with him. Liam came to Kevin after the conversation, asked what they were talking about. Kevin was about to leave. His partner suggested that it was on a date. George heard this and said he could help. The guys came to the clothing store. Liam couldn't believe his eyes that there was a similar place in Korea. They took measurements on Kevin. George offered the guy a suit, saying that it would suit him very well. He approved, but did not understand what all the fuss was about. An hour ago, George told tips on how to win any girl. There were many tricks, but the most important thing was sincerity and the first impression. Then he invited the guys to go to a clothing store with him, because a suitable outfit is the first step to a girl's heart. After a while, Kevin comes out of the fitting room in his new elegant tuxedo. George suggested a watch to complete the look. He also looked for entertainment in the city and gave the main character a plan of action, advising him to just follow it. Kevin realized that George had gotten it all wrong, but he accepted anyway and sent everyone home early. Liam asked George where he was going. The guy always brought couples together and decided to help his boss. There was little time left. The guy said goodbye to the director and ran off to do his own business. Kaya had just gotten out of the shower, picked up the phone and saw that Kevin still hadn't answered, even though he himself had offered to meet, and I thought something had happened. She was scared that the guy wanted to ask her out on a date, but quickly pushed those thoughts away when suddenly she received a call from Kevin on her phone. The guy stood under her window and asked her to come out quickly. She began to ask him about the suddenness of the meeting, why it happened so unexpectedly. Kevin said he just wanted to give her something and go on a date. The girl was embarrassed. It was too early for dinner. They decided to go to the cinema. Kaya accidentally bumped shoulders with an unfamiliar guy and immediately grabbed her head, because she was afraid that her cap would fall off. The guy didn't understand why she was so worried about the opinions of others about her. He took her hand and quickly led her somewhere. He took her to a mask store and told her to put on one of them. They were both wearing masks. People were shocked by such a performance. They thought they were some kind of celebrities. She took the guy by the hand. He thought that she wanted to change, but she wanted to slow down his pace. He suggested moving on, because they could be late for the movie. Kevin and Kaya found themselves alone in the entire cinema hall, which confused the girl. She remembered that when they were choosing a movie, all the seats for the one they wanted were bought, but a stranger approached them and gave them his 2 tickets. An unfamiliar guy in a cap and mask put tickets into the guy's hand and quickly ran away. This guy turned out to be George, after which he returned to the ticket office and asked for a refund for all the tickets except those two. The guy insisted on a refund. The cashier thought it was not adequate. Kaya and Kevin walked down the street and discussed the film. They both had not been to the cinema for a long time. They heard someone behind them call them Beauty and the Beast. They turned around and saw a clown who offered them to play the Wheel of Fortune for free. Such an opportunity, according to the clown, would never arise again. The chance of winning is 90%. Kevin agreed to try. After the girl's attempt, she lost. The clown offered to play with the monster, because it would be nice to give a gift to the girl. Kevin also lost, but the clown spun the wheel to win. The young people noticed this, but did not speak up. They won a prize. The girl was very happy about it. Kevin realized that the clown was George, but could not understand what he was trying to achieve by following him. After that, the young people played in the slot machines with toys and went to a restaurant. The girl was walking down the street with a guy and couldn't understand how much time had passed since the moment she stopped worrying about the looks of others. Kaya simply wore a mask, but she wouldn't have been able to do the same if Kevin hadn't been with her. If this were a dream, the girl would never want to wake up. They sat on a bench under a lantern and discussed the busyness of the day. Kaya assumed that people thought they were sick. Kevin didn't see it as a problem, but the girl still didn't have the courage to walk where there were a lot of people. For her, it was truly like a dream, but sooner or later the dream must end. Otherwise, if she continued to sleep, she could fall in love with Kevin. The girl offered to take off the masks, which she did. The guy wanted to give her something so that she would regain her courage. But before they had time to finish speaking, fireworks began next to them. People nearby began to clap and come up. Observing all this, George realized that everything had not gone according to plan. The guy saw how uncomfortable the girl was and used the bone wall ability. The girl did not understand where they were, and the guy told her to close her eyes to give her a gift. John, when he came to talk to Kevin, said that during the dungeon breakout they lost their parents. The girl stopped doing everything she wants for the sake of John. Kaya suffered from a monster during a breakthrough and received a scar that cannot be gotten rid of. He was ashamed to ask, but still he asked to help his sister. The guy took the ointment out of his pocket and said that Kai would now wake up from his sleep. When she wakes up from a terrible nightmare, she smeared this ointment on the scar. Kevin told the girl not to wet her face. She thanked him for the wonderful day and took his advice to heart. The girl sincerely expected that the scar would disappear after the ointment and decided to see what they won at roulette. It turned out they won a ring, but a simple street vendor would not give out such prizes. The girl was going over the events of today in her head and thought that Kevin wanted to confess his love to her. Kevin made George do push-ups to the count, while at the same time, I repeated the phrase that you need to do only what is asked. Kevin asked the guy about the reason for his actions. He said that they were a manifestation of loyalty to his boss. When asked whose account George was using, he replied that it was the corporate account of the guild. He was again forced to do push-ups under the account with this phrase. Alexander entered the room and saw the head on the sofa and the guy doing push-ups. He was embarrassed at first. The man said that he had settled matters with the Ministry of Defense. Kevin was released from the army on the condition that he fulfilled 10 requests from the army. But something was unprecedented. The man could not find the words. Kevin had to immediately mobilize. At the third entrance of one of the stations, there was a dungeon breakthrough. If you don't clear the dungeon before it resets within 30 days, the barrier breaks and monsters come out of the dungeon onto the streets. Apparently they failed in the cleanup, so they asked for the awakened ones as support to cope with the breakthrough. Kevin wondered what would happen if they couldn't stop him. Unfortunately for those mobilized, if this happened, Daegu would have to be destroyed. Due to the dungeon breaches, there are so many open areas and parks around the stations. A woman soldier called out to the guy and said that all the city's residents had been evacuated, and the dungeon would be broken through tomorrow at 1400. The woman introduced herself as Anna, the person in charge of the area. Kevin didn't understand why he couldn't try to clear the dungeon. It turns out the return portal had already been used 3 times. Kevin didn't know what a return portal was. You could escape from the dungeon in the middle of a cleanup using a return. But this portal can only be used 3 times in one dungeon. Hwarang was the first to try to clear this dungeon, but they failed. The second time, the Hwarang and Hammer guilds joined forces to clear the dungeon, but it did not work. For the third time, they formed a detachment from the awakened ones from all over the world. But it was the same thing, so there was no way to return. You could, of course, try to clear the dungeon in the remaining time, but that meant putting your life on the line. No one wanted to take risks. Kevin asked if a breakthrough shouldn't be more dangerous. The girl turned her head. After all, as Kevin already knew, the terrain of the dungeon also played a significant role. The monsters in this dungeon were not too strong, and it was the terrain that made the raid difficult. Therefore, everything should have gone well. It is impossible for them to bring modern weapons into the dungeon, but on the surface it is their territory. So the advantage is with the people. They simply use all their power. Kevin wondered why he was needed here. Anna replied that the Awakened also played an important role. The military was the main force, and the Awakened ones were in the wings. If the monsters broke through the first line of defense, they would need the help of the Awakened ones. And since they had no information about the boss, Kevin was asked to prepare to fight him. Anna invited Kevin to go to the waiting room. The other Awakened people were there. Anna brought the main character into the room and introduced him to others. There Kevin met Nora again and assumed it was fate. William gave Nora some task and asked if she could handle it. Kevin apologized for jumping the queue at the Soul Station, although 5 stars are not that important, since the squad is not needed there. Nora reminded the guy how she trampled him into the asphalt, and today he has become stronger. People around heard their dialogue and were surprised that the girl beat the main character. Both the guy and the girl were angry. Kevin asked if the girl was getting angry. Anna stood between them and asked them to calm down. They were allies and had to fight shoulder to shoulder. Nora said that although Kevin had become stronger, he still remained a child. People could have died from his only mistake. The guy listened to this. Kevin became furious and began to ask what right a girl has to say this to him. Anna restrained him. While they were calming him down, the girl calmly turned around and left. Kevin asked the military girl to get information about what was inside the dungeon. She said that she would print it out. Kevin stood next to the entrance to the dungeons. His strength really amazed the guy. It was no surprise that this was the strongest dungeon. Nora asked the guy what he was going to do. He replied that, of course, clean it up. The girl assumed that the guy had gone crazy. The guy replied that not really. A crazy person would rather share experience points and achievements with the army and other Awakened ones. In this dungeon, according to the girl, the best Awakened ones failed 3 times. The guy sought death. Kevin told Nora that she talked a lot and suggested that she was afraid. The main character told the girl to wait in place and called her a shy cat. The minister called the director of Hwarang and started swearing. He didn't understand what he was talking about. It was about Nora. He asked that they decided to go back on their word and clear the dungeon. The director was shocked and promised to call back when he found out what was happening. He started calling Nora and didn't understand what she was thinking when she entered the dungeon. The girl touched the bloody stone and assumed that there was a massacre there. She looked at the guy's preparations for battle. She thought that he had gone crazy when he decided to clear the dungeon alone. But now everything became clear. A level 60 ogre tried to attack Kevin, but his skeletons held him back. The guy was happy that he had finally received experience points. The main character summoned a Goyle, who began to fight the ogre with an obvious advantage. After that, the guy summoned a hammer and finished off the enemy. His level increased. Bibi admired her master's work and praised him. Bibi named the Goyle after Rocky. Kevin said that she watches too many movies. The guy decided that it was time to stop fooling around and hurry up. The guy saw in front of him a place that he had already heard about. It was a sacred place from the legends of Alphen, known as the Temple of Giants. The guy decided that the time was right to unlock the special level 40 bonuses. The guy could finally use the increased level skill associated with soul extraction and increase the level of the phantom armor skill to 10. Kevin began to call wandering spirits to himself. The number of subordinates became 100 out of 100. After that, he unlocked the warrior class skill, changed the form of the greatsword, learned the greatsword technique and the sword splitting skill. The hero removed the seal from the demonic stone. Bibi told Shinshin to come out. Bibi immediately rushed to hug her friend. Kevin suggested leaving the touching reunion for later. They had to hurry. There was little time. Bibi and Kevin sat on Shinshin and flew away. A huge monster ran towards Nora. She used her skill and dealt with the monster. The girl saw that the guy had summoned a flying monster and could not understand how many more tricks he had. The main problem due to which they could not clear the dungeon was not the gorge, awakened to use the abilities of flight. Behind this gorge, there are only 3 monsters guarding the Stone of Return. Because of them, everyone then decided to retreat. For greater benefit, it was decided to allow the dungeon to be broken through, to completely destroy and then rebuild the area around it, although she did not like such political decisions. The final decision remained with the head. Nora had to obey, however. If someone could clear the dungeon after the guild's raid, then why couldn't the guild? The girl decided, for the sake of the honor of the Hwarang Guild, to stop Kevin's purge. An hour before the breakthrough, a press conference was held. William was asked the chances of survival of Nora and Kevin, who entered the dungeon together. The president replied that the probability was extremely low. The journalist asked the president what he thought about his sister being inside. William replied that how could he feel if there was a member of his family inside a dangerous place, and he was not even able to help. The president stood up from the table and said that the press conference was over. He was asked to stay. William's work was praised. Everything was stable regarding the dungeon. He decided to go to headquarters. The employee could not understand why the leader was so cold-blooded, because his sister was inside. Perhaps she was also just a card in his guild's deck. Walking down the street, William and the employee saw members of the Ardal Guild who wanted to see their boss. After the flight, Kevin praised Shinshin's work and told him to rest. He and Bibi looked at the Temple of Giants. The girl would have believed that this was a cemetery. The guy was wondering if these statues would turn into golems and ordered the rock to eat them. The plan worked. The golems came to life. But Kevin was clearly not ready for this. Kevin assumed that 5 of them were a trap that worked in a certain area. There was no corpse or soul left from the golems, so all the necromancer skills that Kevin possessed would be useless. In this regard, Kevin decided to improve his warrior skills. Nora was surprised because Kevin had the abilities of a necromancer, but now he looked like an awakened warrior class. She couldn't even think that all these statues would turn out to be golems. If someone just mindlessly went to the altar, they would be surrounded and destroyed. She was extremely surprised by Kevin's instincts. Kevin was glad that the battle would soon be over. All that remained was to fight the trio he knew. The main character managed to cope with the golems and asked Bibi, who was supporting him, to get off the stone. It was dangerous. Judging by how brightly the homecoming stone shone, it didn't look like the dungeon was about to break through. They had little time. They had to hurry. The Cyclops stood in their way, one of the races that came from a line of ancient giants. Although Cyclops come from the same lineage as ogres, they differ from them in that they do not have barbaric qualities and savage nature. The Cyclops inherited wisdom from a line of ancient giants that flourished due to their civilization. They were strong and worthy of being the final boss guarding this temple. One of the Cyclops was surprised to meet Kevin. He could not help but know the giant god of destruction, the witch of hallucinations, and the ruthless necromancer. Cyclops used gigantification and attacked the main character. Kevin assumed that Tranit had sent them too. Tranit became their new order of the universe, which was supposed to fix everything. Kevin, according to the Cyclops, was not able to stop his army. Cyclops said that the guy had already lost when he ran away from Alphen. Kevin became very angry. Kevin began to attack his opponent, who grabbed him with his giant hands and wished the guy eternal peace. The guy freed himself from the clutches of his opponent and sent him to hell. It was not clear to him why the enemy was normal after being hit in the eye with a spear. At this time, members of the Ardal Guild were trying to break through to their guildmaster. The dungeon was about to break through. Kaya hoped for Kevin's return safe and sound and begged him to return safe and sound. Immediately, 3 Cyclops with almost instantaneous ability to regenerate attacked Kevin, but the guy resisted. The situation was hopeless. Kevin understood that if this continued, a dungeon breakthrough would be inevitable. This was the first time the guy had heard of Cyclops with such an ability to regenerate. He, of course, understood that this was their native land. But this was too imbalanced. Kevin asked his partners to distract the Cyclops for a while. He left the method to them. Bibi asked her master to stop for a second. He walked with his feet on the head of the statue. It was so huge, as if without it, no one would have understood what kind of temple it was. The divine relic kept in this temple grants buffs to its faithful. Perhaps in this case, a regeneration buff. If he was not mistaken, then the relic should have been located directly below him. The guy was glad that he seemed to recognize their weak point. He was wondering why they were so alarmed. The guy destroyed the statue. The Cyclops ran straight at him. When the guy now cut off the head of the Cyclops, the regenerative ability disappeared. The 2 remaining giants had the opportunity to continue talking nonsense if they were confident that they could defeat him. After he dealt with his opponents, the guy found many items that could increase his strength. It seems that the main character has become more distant from his previous personality, although this did not matter to him. Kevin and his team went to pick up the homecoming stone, but did not see it there. The stone ended up in Nora's hands. Kevin could not understand what she was doing and why she followed him. William told Nora to force Kevin into the dungeon, which would break through. The guy was a person with unknown abilities and past. There was no better place to find out his secrets than a breaching dungeon. Nora needed to observe the guy closely, find out what his abilities were and what skills he possessed. The girl didn't understand why she had to do this. She could have sent someone of a lower rank. William believed that only she could handle this, and besides, he really wanted Kevin on their side. No matter what Kevin did, the fact that he was able to clear dungeons single-handedly in the shortest amount of time meant that he would have no problem disrupting the Bloodstone market. If Hwarang fails to get him, they will get rid of him before he gains influence. Nora told the guy that she was surprised when she heard that he was clearing dungeons alone. The girl at first thought that he was using some tricks, but now she recognized his strength, but her gratitude was of no use to Kevin. The dungeon was about to break through. The guy asked to return the stone faster, and the girl got into the fight. Nora told Kevin that she couldn't let him leave this place alive. Ardal's team was still trying to get into the dungeon's proximity zone, and William approached them from behind. The head of Hwarang drew a parallel between the employees and their boss. They all did not understand the hints. William said that there would be a dungeon breakout soon, so they had better stay away from this place. Responsibility and compensation for losses would happen after they dealt with the breakout. The military noticed that the barrier stopped responding. There was a fierce battle between Nora and Kevin, each using their abilities. At some point after the blow, the guy summoned a golem. It looked terrifying. But now the girl knew where its core was. It wouldn't be difficult to crush it. The young people were equal in strength, but the guy was clearly inferior to her in speed. The guy set up a barrier. The girl couldn't understand what he was trying to achieve by only blocking her attacks. If you wait too long, a breakthrough will be unavoidable. He felt funny. The girl said that as if breaking the dungeon would not affect her, or she was specifically trying to achieve this. Those who have a grain of power actually have a very dark soul. It is quite difficult to understand what they are thinking about. In any case, the guy didn't care what the girl was up to. He was going to destroy her. Nora noted that the guy is quite confident in himself. The girl in such and such a case asked the guy to show all his abilities. A fierce battle began between the two A ranks. Nora was able to wound her opponent in the face, said that his barrier had reached the limit, and suggested ending it. The girl decided to use the lunar cut skill. The scientist reasoned that monsters are an alien life form. Judging by his hypotheses, dungeons are only the path to them. They are, in a way, steps for aliens to cross the Earth. But they will not be able to cross to us simply by creating a gate. Breaking through the dungeon will only happen after 30 days, but why does it take so long? The person on TV had a theory about the Hearthstones. From what people know about them, Hearthstones are found in dungeons in the form of mines, and they also serve as a way out of the dungeon. If we look at it from the monster's side, 30 days after the dungeon appears, these stones can be used as a key to open the gate to Earth. The listener found this theory plausible. In the past, the dungeons produced fairly weak monsters, and the dungeons were 4-star at best. And the reason we suffered so many losses was because we had nothing to counter them with. They were small, and their movements were different from those in the dungeon. This was due to the fact that they were only able to materialize a small part of their energy, like BB. After the shaking of the dungeons, 5- and 6-star dungeons began to appear more and more often. If events continue to accelerate at this pace, 7-star dungeons are only a matter of time. The guy also thought about this before watching the program, but it was more important for him to find out what this was connected with phenomenon. Dungeons are not only mines, bloodstones are just baits that monsters have placed there. The more bloodstones there are on Earth, the more comfortable they will be here. The guy with insight remembered the bloodstones and thought that they had meaning. On Alphen, the energy that was in these stones was called mana. They increased the concentration of mana on Earth at the expense of people who mine and use bloodstones. In this way, they create an environment where monsters could fully materialize themselves. The delighted viewer decided that he would forever remember the name of the presenter, James Toppler. The guy's phone rang. He picked up the phone. They asked him to apologize for disturbing his rest. The caller thought that the guy should come and look at something. Kevin made a face at the word press conference. The guy once again asked for forgiveness for not being able to stop the interview. He was asked not to answer difficult questions. The guy looked at William and realized that the man was up to something wrong. First, the question was asked by William. The reporter was interested in the crazy clearing before breaking through the dungeon. It was an order from Hwarang or Ardal. Maybe, according to his guesses, it was agreed upon. The head of Hwarang replied that Ardal was not involved. William replied that the other guild was not involved in this. Vice Premier Hwarang personally took charge of this matter. The head was sure that she was only supporting the guy who had been in the spotlight for the last few days. The journalist concluded that the vice leader had entered the dungeon thoughtlessly in the hope of helping Kevin. They wanted to ask Kevin the next question about clearing the dungeon with the girl. They asked him to tell the details of her death. They asked how she died, and whether the guy made any effort to save her. William liked that the man next to him began to be bombarded with questions. He himself put the reporters on the guy. The Korean press will not let him go now. Stana wanted to know the truth. The guy was asked to answer again instead of standing and remaining silent. Alexander realized that things were bad. This unexpectedly turned into a public hearing. If he had known this would happen, he would have declined the press conference. Kevin stood up and asked what the reporter needed and asked him to stop talking. The guy turned and kicked William in the face. He fell out of his chair. Everyone was shocked. William asked what he thought it all meant. Kevin noted that the joke was unsuccessful, as William dared to use his dirty tricks right in front of his eyes. The guy took William by the collar and lifted him up. The head of Hwarang reminded him that there was a live broadcast. William forced the guy to make a mistake. The whole country was now watching this situation. The guy couldn't remember what the population was on Alphen because he killed most of them. But every resident of Alphen watched his actions with his own eyes. The live broadcast of one country is nothing. He asked William if he wanted to be killed in front of the whole country and hit him in the face. George watched this from the TV screen, afraid that he might be in his place. The very thought that he was trying to deceive this man. Even so, to do such a thing at a press conference, he could not believe that there were people who did not care about public opinion. The broadcast was stopped and a program about mating wild gazelles was started. George realized that his boss was making a fuss again. In one of the news lines, he found news about a new saint. Journalists filmed their location with a new miracle that the whole world was talking about. Hundreds of thousands of people came to the square to receive favors from Saint Murdy. George thought that the saint was an elf and called her beauty extraterrestrial. Luli could watch from the screens a person sitting in a wheelchair. It was Mr. Smith, who has congenital weakness in his body. It was interesting whether Mr. would be able to get up today. For the first time in his life, they offered to see the miracle with his own eyes. And indeed, the man stood up after the girl's touch. People were shocked. Mr. Smith thanked Mrs. Murdy with tears in his eyes. The favor of the Lord has no limits to those, according to the new saint, who believe in him. She was only a messenger of the Lord. There were many awakened ones with similar abilities or potions, but none of them were able to heal someone who was sick from birth. People were really amazed by this. They believed that she was a messenger of the Almighty. Hundreds of thousands of people had already followed Mrs. Murda and were ready to become members of the Order of Arya. No one had yet doubted her miraculous abilities. It was funny for the blonde man that after she came out of the dungeon, she was in a state of aphasia. But the amazing girl was able to learn the earthly language in just a couple of days. Goddess Arya, the goddess of fertility and providence in the world of Alphen, she is the one who introduced herself as a priest serving Arya. Demonstrated many miracles. And not only did she have magical extraction, but she could also convey the prediction to Arya through divine revelation, which is truly incredible. Due to her ability to predict the location and time of a dungeon's appearance, Awakened was able to clear 5- and 6-star dungeons in just a week. But to use this power, there is a condition. You need to found a squad of paladins serving the goddess Arya. The blonde asked his assistant how things were going with the squad of paladins. It turns out that a lot of applications had been received. It was alarming that most of the awakened ones of their guild were asking for a transfer. The guy replied that nothing could be done about it. If they couldn't stop them, then it was necessary to get the maximum benefit from them. In any case, at the moment, Ms. Murdy was the best awakened one. Alexander asked his boss to stop. If he continued, they could have big problems. Kevin threw the blue-faced William to the floor. The guy addressed the crowd of journalists, repeating their question about Nora's death. Kevin told reporters how the Hwarangs tried to kill him. As journalists were able to notice, the girl did not succeed, and the unfortunate reporters had the audacity to blame Kevin. The guy warned them that the next time they met, they would not get rid of him easily. Kevin told Alexander it was time to go. Alexander wondered if Nora really wanted to kill his boss. It turned out to be true. The guy admitted that he killed the girl, and the blame lay on the shoulders of her younger brother. Kevin couldn't figure out what his colleague was more surprised by, the girl's murder or the attempted murder of his boss. Alexander thought that even taking into account the fact that they tried to kill him, it was strange to be so calm after killing a person. In any case, according to Kevin, it worked out well. He finished with the one who stood in his way. Alexander was worried about what could happen next and what public opinion would be like. Kevin asked his subordinate if he knew of a remedy that people who acted on the sly could not cope with. This means was an open game. Then such people began to have a headache because they would not be able to plot in secret. It dawned on Alexander why he changed the question of why Kevin incited Nora to death to the question of whether Hwarang really wanted to set up his murder. Since there was no way to prove what happened in the dungeon, Alexander was shocked by what he had come up with. The director asked Kevin if they would deal with the consequences. The guy did not understand the word "we." Kevin was not going to do this. This responsibility was on Alexander. According to Kevin, the director should also have been useful. Nothing. It turned out that the guy didn't come up with something brilliant. Kevin left the building and saw a crowd of people. He didn't understand what it was about. This crowd turned out to be residents who were hiding in shelters. They wanted to thank him. Kevin listened to the gratitude with his mouth slightly open in amazement. Then the little girl gave Kevin a bouquet of flowers. The guy melted. Such things really made him happy. Ardal's employees realized that they would never understand him. The guy was on a completely different level. For now, he was the hero who protected the city. William woke up screaming how bad of a person Kevin was. He was absolutely furious, calling him a crazy bastard and an ill-mannered scum. William promised to do everything possible to end Kevin's life. The action moved to America, to the headquarters of the Titan Guild, to the Order of Arya. Mrs. Murdy was praying. She was interrupted and informed that the guildmaster had arrived to see her. The guildmaster paid tribute to the saint. She asked about the process of creating a squad of paladins. The head replied that they received a lot of applications, so everything was in order. The Order of Paladins were supposed to become heroes in a holy war that would save Alphen. They would lead them and win Alphen back. It would be too late if their main troops invaded us. The Earth would suffer a catastrophe just like Alphen. Alphen and Earth, a holy war to protect both worlds, and yet it was hard to believe. If this were true, then it would not be their problem that they could solve alone with their guild. They would need the help of people from all over the world. The chief had one more piece of news to tell. He found the man whom the saint mentioned in her prediction. She didn't understand what this man had forgotten on Earth. The head didn't understand this problem. She looked at Kevin, called him a ruthless, immortal necromancer. It seems that the guy was the savior from the prediction. 6 days after clearing the dungeon, a subpoena came to Ardal. The president of the Hwarang Guild sued Kevin. The guy wanted to finish him off. Kevin was seriously thinking about murder. He was going to forget about it, but apparently it won't work out. Kevin told Liam to start the car. The guy reminded the leader that he had 2 more days before submitting a report to the police. But the guy was not going to go to court. He was going to visit Hwarang. In Kevin's opinion, everything was going according to plan, and he couldn't understand the surprise of others. Alexander suggested not to complicate the situation and leave this matter to him. Kevin agreed and asked if he could help with anything. Alexander asked to hire more workers. If they wanted to solve this problem, they would need a lawyer, as well as more support staff. Bloodstones continued to accumulate on Earth. At this rate, not just monsters from Alphen, but minions of Tranit would appear. By minions, he meant the 72 captains under the direct command of Tranit. Each of them dangerous, and one person could not cope with him. Even with his followers from Alphen, an army of undead and the help of the Alphen Alliance, they could barely fight on equal terms with the Thranet army. But now Kevin had only these 4. Resistance was out of the question because the only awakened one among them was Liam. And his only strength was kindness. Kevin agreed to recruit new people, but asked to recruit more awakened ones, and asked Liam to follow him. Kevin brought Liam into the dungeon and forced him to fight ogres. It seemed to the guy that he has already become stronger. He quickly collected a sufficient number of stones. The boss asked him to stop collecting them and come to him. Kevin asked how strong his ward wanted to become. The head was sure that he had a goal, or the guy was going to continue collecting stones for years. His original dream was to become a high-class fire mage, nothing he could achieve as a stone collector. He was asked about his satisfaction with his result. The answer was negative. The guy talked about his dream. He was ready to do anything for his dream, even to be tired to death. Kevin was going to start that second. He wanted to make Liam A rank in a month. Liam himself didn't understand how it had come to this, how this could be possible. While the guy was running, he was attacked by Kevin's skeleton soldier. The guy realized that he couldn't relax. One hit and he would become a corpse. The guy decided that he needed to use his skill to increase the distance. But the skeleton survived the fire and wounded the guy. He was in great pain. Kevin stood next to Liam as he lay down and ordered him to get up. Kevin didn't understand how the guy could think he could defeat his skeleton warrior with a fireball. To survive, he himself must want to become stronger. Liam thought that monsters would only appear in dungeons. Kevin asked to imagine a situation where dungeon breaches would occur in all stations around the world. There were 6 billion people on Earth. The main character was sure that in just 3 days, half of this population would be exterminated. Liam could not understand what kind of nonsense his coach was talking about. If this really happens, Kevin will have to be protected by his family. He will not have time for Liam. He will have to learn to survive on his own. If Liam also wanted to protect his family, he needed to make sure he was strong enough. The guy stood up with a painful groan and asked to continue his training. Kevin was waiting for these words. After a while, both guys were sitting in the kitchen and having dinner. Liam was very tired from these crazy workouts. Kevin relieved his overwork with his skill. If he felt tired, it meant that his mind was weak and wanted rest. The main character advised Liam to hypnotize himself to overcome fatigue. They saw a new saint on TV. It was said that her blessing had saved many. The girl reminded Kevin of someone, even her behavior. Liam noted that the girl was charming and looked like an elf. Hearing the name of the girl, the goddess Merdi, the necromancer, had an epiphany. Kevin went to Alexander's office and asked him to get tickets to America. The director thought that the guy was talking about the consortium. Previously, the Titan Guild saved someone in the dungeon. It was a saint known as Merdi. Her mind-boggling abilities raise many questions among people. In this regard, the Titan Guild sent an invitation to a consortium to guilds from all over the world. Alexander thought that Kevin was talking about this. The guy once again repeated his request. The director also showed the skill book and enhancement stones that Kevin had ordered. Tomorrow he was going to instruct Liam to learn them all. The guy noticed that he ordered more than what arrived. This was due to the fact that they had recently used up most of the guild's budget. They were currently being cut in terms of finances. After all, skill books and enhancement stones were always a luxury. Kevin asked about dungeons nearby. There were many of them nearby. But unfortunately, it was difficult for small guilds like Ardal to claim ownership of them, unlike large guilds. The guy asked about breaking through 6-star dungeons. There was one request from the Ministry of Defense, but something made the director think. What made him think about the venue was Pyongyang. A man knelt in front of the president, surrounded by security, and admitted that he had made a mistake. He asked to give him another chance and to have mercy. The leader was angry because the man expected mercy from him, while he himself ran away with his tail between his legs. The president advised it was better to ask for forgiveness from others and pointed the gun at the man. He killed him and asked the guards to clean up the trash. The president asked what happened to their request to South Korea. Good news was prepared for him. The president was delighted at the long-awaited meeting with Kevin. Kevin joked about Pyongyang several times, but who knew that everything would turn out like this? At the airport, he met Anna again. She was supposed to accompany him to Pyongyang. The guy will also be much more comfortable with a person he already knows. Kevin thought there would be a ton of soldiers at the military installations, but it was pretty quiet. Very few areas of North Korea have developed well. Most of the country continues to look like the South in the 70s. Even the capital had only one subway. Kevin assumed that they asked for help because they could not cope with such a small thing, and asked if there were awakened ones in North Korea. They were, but smaller than theirs, so it was difficult for them to assemble a team consisting only of A ranks. And besides, the mortality rate among their awakened ones was quite high. The guy believed that people from the DPRK could either die in a dungeon or simply be shot. Previously, they didn't have too many problems, since up until this point they had been supported. But this time, they tried to deal with the problem on their own and failed. And China only pointedly watched their failures. So North Korea requested help from many countries from around the world. It seems that they considered it unprofitable to loot from a high-ranking dungeon with China, and so it was. In any case, he asked to quickly sort everything out and leave, asked to make sure that the guy received a sentence of half a month as promised. Anna confirmed the full fulfillment of the conditions. The condition that Kevin insisted on was that he be allowed to spend half a month in the dungeon from the start of the first sweep. Negotiations between the North and South would begin after the North side delegation arrived. But this was a fairly minor request for whoever cleared the dungeon first. Everything should have gone smoothly. However, this is only if the dungeon is successfully defended. If it fails, the result will be Kevin's death, and North Korea will suffer huge financial losses. Little by little, relations between North and South will become worse than ever. Everything was in Kevin's hands. They arrived at the site, the Kamswin-sun Memorial Palace. The building was quite bulky. The palace was originally a building representing North Korea. The dungeon station that Kevin was supposed to clear was very close, as measures were taken to prevent a breakout from the dungeon. The guys were called comrades and asked to follow the man. The government was in no hurry, and Kevin, to Anna's surprise, was not nervous at all. There was nothing to be nervous about. It was an obvious psychological trick aimed at morally suppressing the guests by making them wait a long time. The president finally came, extended his hand to the guy and said that he was glad to meet them. Kevin couldn't figure out what kind of pig was standing in front of him. The main character shook the president's hand and said hello to him. Everyone was shocked by such impudence. He was asked to be more polite, because the first chairman was standing in front of him. The guy covered his mouth with his hand and said that he was glad to meet you. Anna did not understand what her partner was doing. Even if he had done something similar in relation to President Hwarang, Anna thought that even without instructions, he would understand how to behave in the presence of this man. The president's security got angry, called the guy an arrogant bastard, said that he wouldn't get away with it. Anna was afraid that now they would become dead. Kevin said that he was more polite, as he was asked. Anna panicked. They could have died right at that moment. The leader laughed loudly. He called Kevin an undeniably outgoing personality, as expected of the South's strongest man. The president put his hand on the guy's shoulder with a smile and invited him to sit down. Kevin suggested getting straight to the point because he was going to head straight to the dungeon. The leader chuckled and called the guy straightforward. The president had already heard about his condition. Kevin wanted to occupy the dungeon for half a month and then take all the resources received. Of course, this would not cause much harm to the North Korean government. They were going to comply with the conditions if he cleared the dungeon properly. He rose from his chair and was about to leave. The leader noted his impatience. Kevin was asked to take a photo with him before he left. Anna really thought that her heart would give out. She asked her to be more careful in her choice of words next time. Kevin said he was already trying to be careful. When the president extended his hand to him, Kevin chose between killing him, but was afraid that he would be fired. The guy opened the portal and told Anna that they would see each other soon. Anna hoped that he would return safe and sound. The president watched this situation through binoculars and thought that it would be wonderful if an equally incredibly strong person appeared in their country. The head was confident that the guy would certainly cope with his task. Kevin felt a disgusting sensation on his back. Kevin and Bibi saw the Tranit colony. The stench hurt the girl's eyes. If one of the 72 commanders of Tranit had left, Kevin would have killed him. A huge flock of grasshoppers ran towards Kevin. It was a fight against numbers. The next enemies were Rokto and the ranchers. The main character asked Dolso to distract the first. All forces were ready for battle. The battle began. Due to Rokto's hard body, no attacks affected him. Kevin wished he could summon a Death Knight and a Lich at such a moment. However, instead of them, he had the attacking skills of a warrior. After 12 days in the dungeon, Kevin and Bibi stood in front of a strange hulk and assumed that the area around the center was a colony. This place was an incubator. It looked like they weren't ready yet. It looks like they won't be able to meet the owner of this colony. Kevin would like to find out who it is, the guy suggested, ending this and leaving. The main character used the ability to resurrect corpses. He sent his soldiers into the mouth of the hatchery and caused an explosion. The Stone of Return appeared in front of him. Not only the Stone of Return appeared in front of the guy, but also a fragment of a dimension. A fragment that forms a spatial sacred land. Kevin asked Bibi if she knew about the spatial sacred land. This was the first time the girl had heard about it. He decided to put it in his inventory. The President of the North was in the secret hobby room, hanging a portrait of Kevin on the wall. The President ordered the last photograph to be thrown out, and there was a knock on the door. A military man came in with news that the leader would be glad to hear. Comrade Kevin successfully cleared the dungeon. The President could not believe it. The President asked to bring him urgently. He had to treat the hero well. It was impossible to know anything for sure. Comrade Kevin could return there because he felt good treatment from the Northern Republic. The commander was angry with the main character because he was able to clear the dungeon in just 3 days. Kevin was photographed, discussed about his clearing of a 6-star dungeon alone, and it was assumed that his awakened abilities were as powerful as Murdy's. Anna ran to the main character and congratulated him on the successful cleanup and said that he had done a great job. The guy said that he came there for the sake of a successful cleanup, but she didn't expect that he could be so successful. Kevin did not understand where the negotiators were. Both sides, Southern and Northern, were just waiting for the results of his purge. The guy didn't understand what to expect when he was here. Anna decided not to tell him that the negotiating team believed that his chances of failure were 70%. Kevin trusted that the negotiators would do a great job, so he went back to the dungeon. The military man ran and called out to Anna. He asked her where Kevin had gone. The man's face changed and he said something terrible had happened. At this time, the President asked that everything be done in the best possible way in the banquet hall, so that they would not lose to the south. Kevin was engaged in auto hunting. It really interested him. The guy finally reached level 60. The guy purchased a bone bow and immediately began testing it. It had a larger affected area and higher speed than a bone spear. With the privilege of the warrior class, he summoned a goblin. As always, Kevin looked at him with disgust. The goblin suggested that the guy give him a new body. Since he hated him so much, his body was also an excellent option. Kevin asked to stop. The guy would call him when needed, and until then he asked to return to his shadow. It looks like this place was finished. If the guy hurries, he will be able to clear this dungeon again. Kevin came out of the dungeon. Anna was waiting for him. As soon as the man in uniform saw him, he knelt down and began to beg the guy. The girl asked him to rest a little before cleaning it again. All this was useless if he was here. A few days before this raid, it was announced as general conditions for the South and North. He needed to be there. Kevin said that this was the business of politicians. It was time for him to return. This happened several times. The girl on her knees asked to think about her country and take a break before the cleansing. If this time the guy didn't go with her, Anna didn't know what it could turn into. The guy was bored and decided to go. Anna thanked him for his presence. Kevin was asked to write his name before leaving. He was the strongest awakened one in North Korea, and it was an honor to receive his autograph before he left. Kevin wished his friend to continue trying. Kevin ordered the goblin to attach himself to the president and inform him about everything that was happening. The military, by order of the president, had to follow the guy. They were asked to be invisible. The military man was angry that he dared to look down on his homeland. Everything he was going to do was for the sake of the prosperity of a strong and prosperous republic. The military wished Kevin luck before his final sweep. The guy went inside. The military man told him to hurry up before the barrier disappeared. The military man ran after the guy and said that he had an urgent message from the president. The president thanked him, and the military man pressed the button. An explosion occurred. The barrier did not disappear. The military man did not understand why. He assumed that the guy did not die instantly. Even so, Kevin would have mortal wounds. It would only be a matter of time before he became prey to the monsters. The military man was waiting for the guy to finally give up and die. This operation was destined for success. Anna reported that Kevin still had not returned and the barrier was not responding either, which put everyone in a difficult position. A day had already passed since the deadline that Kevin requested. It was hard to imagine what kind of compensation North Korea would ask for. The girl realized that something was wrong, because the last cleanup lasted 1 day and 17 hours, by which time the guy should have left. Right after Kevin entered the dungeon, a foreign reporter took a picture as a North Korean soldier followed him. They should have immediately started investigating and protesting against North Korea. If they go against them based on a tiny doubt, then it is not sure that it will be safe. Anna didn't understand how they could sit and wait. The manager asked to think first, then speak. There was a possibility that there was a wiretap, and they were not sure whether he was alive or not. The president did not understand what kind of idiot took this photo. The military will try to find out. The head of the North ordered to find these bastards and bring them to him. It had been 3 days since Kevin came inside. Anna hoped he was okay. The barrier disappeared. Anna was shocked. Kevin came out alive and asked if they all really decided to die. Kevin said to get the nasty pig there. If he doesn't agree, Kevin will come to him himself. The military man pointed the gun at the guy, who grabbed him right by the barrel and told him that if he survived the explosion, then the gun would definitely not kill him. Bibi said that the guy was too hot-tempered. What if he was convicted of murder? He was told that he would not be allowed to enter Pyongyang. The awakened North Koreans stood before him, ready to fight. The guy pointed his hand at them and wished to die, no matter how strong they were. The military girl asked Kevin to stop. She has an F rank. She is slightly better than an ordinary person. She apparently was able to overcome Vivi's spell. She asked to stop all this, otherwise they would not be able to correct the situation. Kevin didn't understand why he should fix it. The only one who should fix it is the fat pig. Anna's guesses were confirmed. A North Korean spy was trying to eliminate the guy. Even so, Kevin had to come to terms with the fact that at this rate, a real war could start. She asked him to think about the country. Kevin said that the girl talked too much and asked her not to get in the way if she didn't want to die. The girl asked him to kill her if he wanted to go further. Apparently there was nothing to be done since the girl decided to go so far. The girl was happy and said that Kevin made the right choice. The guy hit her in the stomach with a flourish and said that he would not kill her and advised her to relax and lie down for a while. Bullets flew at the guy, but he decisively dealt with them with the help of his ability. He stood in front of the bunker door. Kevin turned to the president and asked to talk. The guard told the chief that he had nothing to fear because the bunker was capable of withstanding any bomb. The president saw the golem break down the door and asked if the guard was sure of his words. The angry guy asked again if he and the president could talk. Kevin was wondering how the head dared to raise a hand against him. He answered him that he had never even thought of such a thing. The main character was wondering if the president was going to ask for forgiveness from him. The guy had a way to find out the whole truth. The guy asked if it was worth taking a look at the leader's personal life. It turned out that the president really didn't do this. Bibi said that he was in trouble again and would have to work hard to get everything out of the way. Kevin asked the president whether he did all this or not. The man said that he was not lying. In this case, the guy asked to find the one who did this, or the head would die instead of the instigator. The head promised that he would find this bastard, no matter what the cost. With this, they finished. The guy asked for forgiveness for the misunderstanding. The president replied that it was not worth it and that he himself was to blame. Turns out, Kevin had such a big fan that he didn't even know he had. He couldn't believe that the head of the North was a fan of the Awakened Ones. The leader collected many artifacts that he had never even used. The guy decided to accept it as a gift. The guy was looking for the place according to the goblin's memories, and it seems he was already close. Anna caught up with Kevin and asked him to stop. The guy was surprised that she recovered so quickly. Apparently he hit too weakly. She said that everything was unimportant, and once again asked the guy to stop. He said that everything was already over. Anna couldn't believe that the guy had already killed the leader. She said it was all over now and the war would be unstoppable. The guy told the frightened girl that the leader was still alive. The girl was confused by the word. She thought that he was just going to kill him. Anna asked the guy to come to his senses. If his anger could not be pacified with words, then she offered to take her away. Kevin asked her if she was really ready to give her life. If it helped stop the war between the Korean peninsula, then she would be honored to sacrifice herself. The girl did not lie, although she did not have such a pure and innocent soul as John or Liam. This was the first time the guy had seen such fire in her eyes. Perhaps it was because she was so confident in her views. Kevin said that the girl was too valuable to just kill her. He asked to leave her position. She asked again. The guy asked to leave her position and join his company, in which case he would spare the leader. Anna did not understand why he spoke sharply about this. But the girl said that she was ready to offer her life. This meant for the guy that now she completely belonged to him. Anna realized that Kevin wanted her to give up her career as a soldier, which she had been pursuing for so long. She would gladly do it if it would help stop the war. 3 days later, the president caught everyone involved in the attack, and as always, those caught included innocents. Leader Severe noted how resilient the scum were. The man who was tortured swore that he really didn't know anything and had nothing to do with it. The president began to shout that the person caught should not lie, because they not only attacked Comrade Kevin, but they even stole the treasures that people obtained with sweat and blood. The man who was caught said that he really didn't know about the treasure, and suggested that it could be Kevin. The president only became angrier, and asked him if this torture was not enough for him. The president called them dirty bastards and ordered them to be beaten until they remembered. The president was killed by the thought that such a traitor was so close to him. If not for Kevin, the consequences would have been more serious. Anna was happy that she and Kevin had finally arrived back home. The girl told the guy that he could not even imagine how nervous she was during these 3 days. While he was resting carefree, the sounds of military courts and shots were heard every day. The guy was only happy about the trip because he raised his level and found a new employee. He called the trip to the north a success, but now a flight to the United States of America awaited him. Kevin couldn't wait to meet the saint. He knew that she had been waiting for him all this time. Based on the news received, according to the television crew, they can conclude that the person who organized the coup is the man who is currently the leader of the superpower of the Korean National Republic. According to another presenter, the awakened ones were like two sides of a coin. Those with power beyond human power protect the common people from monsters in the name of their race. However, this also means that they will be able to commit crimes with ease. If it weren't for Kevin, there is a high probability that because of this coup, the current president of the North would have been overthrown from power. He asked his colleague if this could have happened. The very fact that some individual with a radical ideology had control over North Korea is frightening. Kevin's contribution to the relations between the two countries is amazing. And in connection with this, they plan to award him with a presidential medal. George said everything was clear to him. The blonde guy believed that everything he had heard was a lie. Because he knew his boss, like his colleagues, it was unrealistic that he could do something without mistakes. George was wondering what his boss was doing to blackmail the president of the North. Perhaps he offered him life in exchange for complete freedom of action. And the television people turned it so that the man turned out to be the thief of all the artifacts. But in reality, it was their boss who stole them. Alexander advised them to give up all these thoughts. Even if their boss was a saboteur, he could just go and clean everything up. George didn't think that the boss was a saboteur, but he definitely, in his opinion, was someone who did not think about his actions. Liam first met him like this, but it happened when they joined a party to clear the dungeon. Everyone understood that it was Kevin who cleaned out the entire president's treasury. That's why George believed that they couldn't believe everything the media said. Maybe Kevin had already killed the president. Michael advised him to give up these thoughts. Forget about the theft. He could not believe that the main character could do such a thing. Liam said that the boss had already suggested killing the president before the guild was founded. George was shocked and showed his goosebumps to his colleagues. Liam said that this happened when the guy received a summons to the army. George was even more shocked. George, of course, didn't hint at anything. But if you go back to the moment when he was still selling phones. Suddenly, Kevin came into the room and interrupted the guy's monologue. The boss did not understand why his employee was so alarmed. Kevin assumed that the guys were gossiping behind his back. George was confused. The guys clinked glasses and thanked each other for a good job. Kevin wanted his employees to eat well so they could do their jobs well. Michael thanked his boss for his work and decided to pour him more alcohol. Alexander was wondering if his boss really wasn't going to the Blue House. The guy wasn't going to and asked not to ask him. The guy didn't like that his subordinate thought that he would run to the government at the first call. Kevin stood up pointedly and decided that it was time for him to leave. Alexander did not see the need for this. The man offered to simply politely decline their request. Alexander did not understand, of course, how to deal with this, but the situation was resolved. George asked if his boss knew who was more popular than him. He showed him Murdy, told him that she was a saint of the Order of Area. The boss said that he was not sure whether the video was fake or not. The blonde guy asked how his boss knew this. Kevin replied that he knew her. Everyone was so surprised that their mouths gaped. Alexander said that she was first found in the dungeon during research. She should be on par with awakened S-ranks, and his boss said that he knew her. Kevin began to pour himself a drink while at the same time starting to talk about the planet Alphen. The director didn't even know that Kevin was interested in astronomy. The boss continued his story about how he disappeared 5 years ago, and the planet he was thrown onto is called Alphen. George did not believe him and thought that it was all a joke, and he quickly figured it out. Kevin told him to shut up and denied his assumption. The guy agreed and did not argue with his boss. But not only people lived on Alphen, there were monsters and hybrids. In an attempt to survive, he fought with them for 20 years. And in the end, he was able to return to Earth, where only 5 years had passed. Alexander noted that it was very similar over time in the dungeons, Kevin confirmed. Just like on Alphen, dungeons began to appear on Earth. Alexander thought about it, because if everything told was true, then now he could understand why his boss was so inhumanly strong. It also explained well the fact that he could communicate with others so easily. Because if you did the math, Kevin was about 44 years old. And yet, it was there, according to Kevin, that he learned about Murdy. The guy did not know how she got to Earth, but they would only understand it when he went to her and asked. Liam asked if his boss could spread this information so easily. Kevin didn't understand why he had to hide it. They live in a world where priestesses emerge from dungeons. Alexander inquired about Kevin and Murdy's relationship. Kevin replied that the girl was like a friend to him. Murdy felt that the ruthless, immortal necromancer was coming towards her. The bearded man informed Murdy that someone had arrived quite quickly. The lady asked the man if he was sure he would be okay. They were in the Valley of Death, and it was from there that no one ever returned. The general confirmed this statement, but for her it was the only way to survive. If they stopped, they would be caught by Threnet and the Immortals. The general was called out and told that someone was hovering above them. He assumed that Ardal had reached them. The bearded man warned about the battle with Ardal and advised him to just hold on. But before the general could finish speaking, his head was cut off. Kevin asked the goddess why the dogs from the Alliance suddenly decided to show up for this place. The guy suggested that this was the safest way for them to commit suicide. The guy asked the president to stop beating him, because he just sold the phone with a tiny markup. Kevin thought about killing George this time. Liam was uneasy because Kevin was indifferent to the media and what was happening around him. Alexander said that even so, he should pay attention to official affairs and think about social isolation at the international level, because there is nothing good in making new enemies. Kevin said that he used to worry about this. He worried about the country and he cared about how others would look at him because he cared about public opinion. But he couldn't understand how far he could go at this rate. Kevin said that the time would soon come when all the dungeons in the world would break through at once. A catastrophe would occur that could not be compared with the upheavals of 5 years ago. Countries and their laws would cease to exist. Alexander thought that even if this happened, the army would be able to suppress them. But if they were able to suppress 6-star monsters, then the likelihood of suppressing stronger ones was small. Kevin made an analogy, saying that a 6-star monster is a domestic dog, and there will be an influx of tigers, lions, and elephants, and maybe dragons. Modern firearms will be useless, even against the ghosts that will fly around them. It is unclear how to stop them. Nuclear weapons are a direct path to suicide. The world will collapse, and the borders that everyone calls countries will be erased into dust and ashes. Morality will turn into myth, and all that will remain is the desire for survival. Liam was confident that even in this case, people would unite to defeat a common enemy. There will indeed be such people. Warriors, kings, saints, and their knights, even knights from the United Kingdoms. But all this will be useless. Everyone will try to grab their own piece until everything collapses. And ultimately, people will turn away from each other, succumbing to temptation and creating associations only to achieve their own goals. Liam didn't understand what to do in this case because they couldn't just sit and wait. This is exactly what the boss said they were preparing for. The world will need a hero in times of disaster. Therefore, a strong leader will be needed. He must show them more. How arrogant and cruel Kevin can be. William was angry, looking at Kevin, and could not understand how the guy could pull it off like that. He didn't understand how the rebels could praise him. The head of Hwarang could not understand what the president was doing, because he said that he would cut off the guy's tail. But William had plans for all eventualities. The man wanted to see if he would continue to ignore him after the messages he sent. William called the president and promised to get rid of some documents if he fulfills his request. Kevin, in William's opinion, chose the worst opponent he could. William knew about the relationship between the president and the West, and asked to be put in touch with them. When flying to the USA, Liam laughed at the airport. Kevin didn't see anything funny and asked what it was about. It turns out that Liam was given a B rank. Kevin had plans to visit America when Liam became A rank. But even so, for the guy it was a huge achievement. He believed that it was all thanks to the boss and his instructions. Liam felt like he had died and been reborn a couple of times in 1 week. Kevin forbade the guy to clear 4-star dungeons alone, succumbing to emotions, and gave him the thing. This item turned out to be a marble throwback stone. Kevin gave it to him just in case, telling him to get out of the place as soon as he sensed danger. Liam was extremely happy. He understood that his boss just had a strange way of communicating, but in fact he was kind. He was glad that he had finally become a little needed, because a lot of money had been wasted on him. If he died, Kevin would summon a skeleton from his corpse. Alexander spoke in a raised voice on the phone. The guys asked who happened to him and what happened. The call came from the Ministry of Defense. They spotted a terrorist group and reported that their target was Kevin. Kevin didn't understand why he surrendered to them. Kevin was banned from leaving the country by the president until the problem was resolved, and the consortium was already tomorrow. This happens even to Kevin, whose word is equal to the power of the entire country. She and the unknown man were heading to the same place. He offered to fly them on a private plane. Kevin didn't know this man. Alexander was surprised by this. This man, Eugene, was the head of the largest guild in all of Korea and one of the country's A-rankers. Eugene asked what the guys thought about his proposal. Kevin happily accepted this offer, as long as they weren't afraid of terrorists. Eugene replied that petty terrorists would not be able to scare him off. The head of one guild proposed to become friends with the head of another guild. Kevin did not understand what the old man was raving about. Apparently, he had not watched the famous series. Kevin didn't understand what kind of series it was. They explained to him that it was popular slang that is used in many modern TV series. Kevin already thought that he was being called to a duel or something like that. It was a long way to get to America. Eugene invited the head of Ardal to watch the series. Eugene was damn rich, but in life he behaved like an ordinary neighbor boy. 20 hours later, they arrived in America. Kevin thanked Eugene, who said that this was not necessary. Now they have become friends, and friends always share with each other. Their assistants were ashamed of them, and those around them did not understand what these Koreans were doing. A few hours before, they were flying and watching TV series. Kevin was met by his guide from the Titan Guild. His goal was to get him safely to the hotel. Eugene was sorry that his new friend was leaving, and he suggested a drink after the rest. Kevin agreed. They said goodbye until they meet again. Alexander wondered if Kevin liked Eugene. The boss replied that Eugene is a very funny person, and they are almost the same age. Although Eugene turned 42 this year, Eugene supposed Eugene's life wasn't much different from his. Eugene believed that Kevin was not an ordinary guy. He did not seem worried or surprised, even when he heard about potential terrorists or when talking with him. They suggested that maybe the main character was very confident in his abilities. There could be something more. After all, such confidence and calm could not be due only to the youthful spirit. Eugene only became more interested in what kind of person Kevin was. He liked him. He was also pleased that they had similar tastes in TV series. The consortium will take place tomorrow at lunchtime, so the car will be waiting for the guys at 11. The guide wished a pleasant stay to Alexander and Kevin. Kevin said that he would wait for the director from the shower. After that, they were going to go for drinks. Alexander wanted to rest a little on a day like this, and his boss was going to get drunk right after a 20-hour flight. But the director agreed anyway. Kevin got out of the shower, thought about starting to move out, and turned off the light. The guy noticed the laser in his room and turned towards it. Kevin saw a bomb flying towards his window, jumped out to meet it, and detonated it before it hit the hotel. The guy fell on the car with a roar, completely changing it. He didn't understand why they wanted to blow up an entire building just to get rid of him. Kevin drank his potion and returned to normal. There was a terrorist attack right in the center of the city. The guy thought that if only he wouldn't pretend to be a sweetheart unnecessarily, but also wouldn't act so impudently as to become an enemy to someone like them. Kevin ordered Bibi to follow the helicopter. Even so, the guy sent the goblin after them at the very moment when the explosion occurred. So it's a matter of time to find them. Kevin couldn't decide whether he should look at their faces. The saint was informed that Kevin had just arrived. Murdy asked if people did anything to piss him off. She was told that no. The Titan Guild took him straight to his hotel room. The woman opposite the saint didn't understand who this Kevin was who was making Murdy so worried. Murdy was glad that tomorrow she would see the ruthless necromancer. She could no longer avoid him. She was worried that she had angered him by not showing up for the meeting in person. Kevin, according to the saint, was someone who thought that way. Murdy asked where the hotel where the main character stayed was located. In her opinion, she had to meet him immediately. In this case, the Holy Knights of Aria volunteered to accompany her. Alexander and Michael pounded on the door of Kevin's room, but for some reason he didn't open it. While washing in the shower, Alexander heard a gas explosion. Residents of the rooms jumped out onto the balconies, even in shorts, just to find out what had happened. Alexander was afraid that something bad had happened to his boss. They knocked down the door, and in front of them was revealed a real mess in his room. On the way in the car, the saint was asked if everything suited her. The answer turned out to be negative. This was the first time her escort had seen her in person. She usually looked different. The man promised to protect her no matter what, because she cured his daughter. The car slowed down sharply. Everything was fine with the saint. The escort immediately began to recognize the situation. There was an explosion ahead. The blonde couldn't believe it. The saint asked the escort James what was happening. The man replied that there had been a terrorist attack and offered to return. Murdy was worried it was because Kevin was angry. She told James that they had to figure out what was going on. The man insisted on returning to the base. He would inspect the area in the future and report to her. The guy told everyone that the path was back to the church and asked everyone to check the situation. Kevin was watching the terrorists. They noticed him and began to wander in circles along the alleys. They were not so stupid as to go straight to the base. In this case, he decided to catch the guy in front of him first. The guy began to run away. Kevin ran after him as fast as he could. It was impossible to catch up with the guy. The main character was surprised by the speed of the pursued man. It was greater than him. He remembered about one similar creature, Nora, but now he decided to use his skill. The guy grabbed the pursued man, but he suddenly moved to the other end of the street. This asshole was apparently from the 7th circle. With this level of speed, in Kevin's opinion, the guy could easily be the best in the world. The guy beckoned Kevin with his finger. The main character was amused by this. Approximately 10 years had passed since the last time someone provoked him openly. The guy went into the dungeon. It was nice of him, according to Boss Ardal. The guy in the dungeon said that Kevin followed him to his own grave. This was his 100th hunt. He was born in Afghanistan, and when he was 10, his father sold him to the rebels. Seeing how his dad was overjoyed after receiving a couple of bucks, the child became a monster. And the endless war before his eyes forced him to kill enemies for the sake of survival. If necessary, he can slaughter an entire army. He killed and killed and killed. His very existence is the result of his murders. And to become awakened, He continued his life as an assassin. The guy was waiting for Kevin to approach him. As always, he planned to kill in the best place at the best time. The guy counted to 3 and attacked Kevin with a knife from behind. The guy did not understand how his opponent predicted his attack. Kevin grabbed him by the collar and told him he was caught. The guy was able to escape and waved the knife. Kevin managed to dodge. The guy didn't understand how the main character knew where he would be. After he became awakened, no one could predict him. Kevin admitted that his opponent is quite good. Most assassins wield 2 blades, so one-on-one fighting is their strong point. The guy didn't understand what kind of nonsense Kevin was talking about. He began to criticize him early. The main character decided to see how long his opponent could hold out. The guy was amazed at the strength of the enemy. He was told that he was definitely a necromancer. Suddenly, Kevin disappeared. The guy realized that he had gone down into the dungeon. This time, he decided to come and finish him off. There was a lot of blood around him and not a single corpse. The lights turned on and the killer stood surrounded by the necromancer's skeletal soldiers. Kevin announced the start of the second round of the challenge. The guy realized that it was a trap. He tried to count the skeletons, but then realized that the number did not matter. The killer used his God's Wrath skill. He had a berserker skill. He had dual skills as an assassin warrior. The guy desperately rushed to attack the skeletons. Kevin realized that his soldiers were useful. The killer repeated under his breath that he would kill Kevin, and ended up behind him with a sword. He already considered that the 100th hunt ended successfully. But suddenly, Kevin managed to turn around. Kevin skillfully cut off his opponent's head, but he didn't understand how he managed to do it. The main character realized that if such children are raised correctly, they will definitely become useful. The sin of the one who pointed the blade at Kevin. After these words, the guy sealed the killer's soul. The next day, in the interview hall of the Titan Guild, Eugene noticed that Alexander looked worried. Eugene was sure that Kevin would return soon, because he was the best awakened of Korea. Kevin was the one who could deflect missiles with his bare hands. Alexander was worried that America would think that he attacked them. Eugene looked at his watch and said that everything would start soon, and it was time for them to come in. The presenter thanked everyone who came to today's consortium. Solving the problem of the consortium was beyond the power of one guild. So the head of Titan asked them, awakened from all over the world, to help them, and first offered to discuss the information they had about the dungeons. The dungeons they knew were spatial gates that connected 2 planets, Earth and Alphen. The monsters that come to Earth are not peculiar to it. On the contrary, they are the inhabitants of Alphen. They also knew that time in the dungeons flows 4 times slower due to the difference in the passage of time between Alphen and Earth. The guy from the audience suggested that if the gates are open, it means that they need to be closed. The answer was no. Such changes were too risky. They had a better solution. During the president's speech, a saint appeared on stage. She said that people from Earth must cross the bridge and be the first to exterminate the monsters. Murdy said that she was pleased to meet those sitting in the hall. She arrived from the planet Alphen to save the Earth. The viewer from the audience could hardly believe that she was a priestess or someone from Alphen. What he saw in front of him was nothing more than an ordinary awakened one. She used her ability to prove to everyone sitting who she was. She, together with the Order of Paladins, was going to open the way for them to Alphen. Everyone would have to go there in order to save the planet Earth. If the awakened ones do not decide to do this, then only ruins will remain on Earth, just like on Alphen. This war was intended to save both planets. People began to talk among themselves, because after they saved the Earth, they could continue selling bloodstones. This was a great chance to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. They were already open, and Murdy was asked if this was why she had come all this way. The immortal necromancer whom Murdy had been waiting for appeared in the hall. The guy began to approach the goddess. Outwardly, he already looked different, but she was sure that it was him. Kevin said that he was even a little embarrassed because the goddess was looking down at him. James began to show aggression towards the guy and asked him to mind his manners in front of the saint. Murdy bowed to Kevin like a king ruling over an immortal army, like a godlike warrior who would destroy everything in his path. Murdy knelt in front of Kevin and looked into his sneakers. The guy said that they had not seen the goddess for a long time. They communicated in the Alphen language. The guy asked that this was the end of their mutual truce. Sviata said that everything was wrong. If she had known that it was Ardal, she would not have taken a step there. Kevin asked why she came to Earth. It turns out that she received an order from the goddess to bring a savior from planet Earth. She was just a humble servant. Kevin asked Guildmaster Titan to talk to him. The head of Titan replied that they would not be able to do this there, and asked to move to a more secluded place. Kevin approached the camera and asked to turn on the live broadcast. The main character wanted to convey an appeal on the eve of the new year. If it was about a hero who stopped a terrorist attack on a hotel, then they had to show the world, no matter what the cost. Kevin asked the bastard who launched the missile at him, the bastard who was the middleman, and the bastard who messaged him later if they were watching the broadcast. Kevin said he would find them all and kill them. The camera manager understood this as if the main character was declaring war on terrorists. It was a relief for Alexander that his boss was okay and thanked him for saving him from the explosion. The Titan Guildmaster took the Saint and James to talk to them about something. Alexander was dissonant because Kevin said that the Saint was his friend, but judging by what happened earlier, she was more like him. Kevin didn't understand what the director was talking about, because to him, they really were friends. Eugene turned to his principal and said that he was really interested in his little brother. The director asked him which part interested him more because the guy was definitely dangerous. The Saint asked the Guildmaster Titan to give way to the Monarch of Ardal. The head did not understand this. Kevin told Murdy not to worry and that he was fine. The Titan head asked Murdy to sit down, but she couldn't dare to do so. The head of Titan inquired about the relationship between the Necromancer and the Saint, who replied that they were friends. The head asked him if the Saint had arrived from Alphen. He said that he did not need interrogation. The head himself could then ask her. The Necromancer took out the head of the murdered killer and showed it to everyone. It would be great, according to Kevin, if the Titan found out about the identity and owner of the head. The Saint was shocked that someone tried to assassinate the Monarch of Ardal. The Earth apparently chose the path of self-destruction. Kevin said that he did not suspect the Titan of this. He simply asked to find the one whose orders the killer was carrying out. As they could see, there weren't many A-rank killers in the world. Murdy said she would do anything. The head of Titan told her that the U.S. Department of Defense would deal with this itself. The Saint thanked the Guild Master for working with her. She should have devoted her life to carrying out their orders. She would have done so and would have returned to Alphen to save many lives. She only asked not to anger the immortal. Kevin didn't know what would happen to the Earth if it took all the awakened with it, and sent them to a terrible death, that if all the dungeons opened, there would be no one to stop them. The Saint again fell at the feet of the Necromancer, who asked her to stop hammering her brains out, sit opposite her, and tell her in more detail. She had a way to stop the dungeon from breaking through. First, he must learn about the spatial dimension and a fragment of space. At this time, in an unidentified underground base, the guy turned to Professor Leola. He thought it was time to immediately shift their bases. It looks like a Sa'ad has failed. They were at the last stage of their research. They could not leave this place. Besides, it was originally promised that 2 days would be allocated. This could no longer continue. Otherwise, they risked exposing their base. Lyola asked for another 3 hours. They would leave this place after he carried out the last test. Bibi could not have imagined that the place she would end up in while pursuing the killer would turn out to be a dubious research facility. The scientist had a fragment of space in his hands. The scientist told the professor that the energy level of the bloodstone exceeded a critical level. The man was interested in the indicators. They were at least 5 stars. Professor Leola was very happy about this. This experiment will prove to the whole world that he is the greatest dungeon explorer, not Toppler. The indicators continued to grow. They had already reached 6 stars. Bibi watched this. The mana fluctuated very much. If this continues, it will not lead to good. The indicators began to grow rapidly. The scientist was shocked. The indicators exceeded all norms. The light from the fragment burst outside the building. The man was glad to finally find a place where vitality filled him to the brim. Bibi jumped out at this creature. The succubus was very energetic. Before the Saint explains the method of stopping the splitting of the dungeon, they had to learn about spatial change and a fragment of space. In her understanding, the spatial dimension was a special space in the upper dimension, but she was sure that they were already there. These are other dimensions that appeared behind the red portal, appearing in dungeons from levels 4 to 6, Kevin remembered. As they may have already noticed, dungeons are like the entrance door to such places. Many dungeons are connected to one-dimensional areas, like the tentacles of an octopus. Kevin didn't understand how this had anything to do with stopping the monsters that were breaking out of the dungeons, or why these splits were happening at all. Speaking from the point of view of Earthlings, dungeon rifts are a process of synchronization. Monsters will not be able to exert their full power if there is not enough mana, so they cleave dungeons in order to spread the energy of the dungeon. They turn the Earth into their habitat, literally terraforming the Earth. Kevin couldn't understand if this meant that they could stop this process. Even if they cleared the dungeons, the Earth was filled with mana from bloodstones. Murdy knew one way. Dungeons and spatial dimensions are under the control of the Dimensional Lord. In other words, whether to send monsters or not is his will. Kevin had an epiphany and asked if they could be the Lords of Dimensions. The invader Tranit and his 72 military leaders are representatives of the Lord. Besides them, there are still lords of a lower level. And at the moment, they are expanding their power through a war in which everyone is trying to win their own territory. They were busy defending the lands of Alphen, but they did not have the strength to fight back, so her plan was to gain the title of Lord of Dimensions and confront them on equal terms. In order to restore all the dungeons on Earth and Alphen, this sounded attractive to Kevin. It turns out, according to Kevin, if they take away all this land from them, they will remain on the street. Kevin hoped that when they recaptured them all, they would be able to see the Thranit boys who had hidden their faces so skillfully. Now Murdy was asked to tell how to get spatial lands. They would be able to acquire spatial territories and take personal control of empty lands. Only both plans required the presence of stones, which were called a fragment of space. Kevin pulled out a fragment of space and showed it to Murdy. The Saint was shocked that her interlocutor was able to get it. He said that he just picked it up somewhere. He asked what to do with it. They needed 1 piece to get the conquered dungeon. So Emma's needs 3 pieces because they don't have their own spatial dimensions. Kevin wondered if he could take anyone. Murdy said that he needed the dungeon to choose him. If he held onto a fragment of space, he would point to the dungeon reacting to him. The main character did not understand such stinginess. In this case, the guy asked her to give him 2 more such fragments. Judging by the way she remained silent, she had some leftovers. The guy extended his hand and asked to give them back. He asked her if she was sure that she only had 1 fragment. He had little confidence in her. Murdy said that this thing was very difficult to get. For God's sake, he should have returned it back. Kevin's shadow returned. The guy didn't understand why so early, because he told him to follow Bibi for support. He said that they had lost the hallucination witch. Kevin was shocked and asked who did it. This was done by one of Tranit's pawns, Rushmod. The guy quickly got up from his chair and told everyone that he had to go. Kevin said he was going to the guy who carried out the terrorist attack on him. The head of Titan said that they had not yet formed a support detachment. After its collection, he necessarily did not have time to finish. The Saint realized that Rushmod had appeared. It was still too early for the Lord's representatives to appear. Kevin ordered Murdy to gather the previous squad and follow him. Now that he thought about it, the guy realized that there were no stations there. Everyone disembarked from the helicopter and watched Kevin. The head of the Titan asked the Saint if everything would be okay without a support squad, how they could cope with the split of the dungeon with such a small number of people. It didn't matter to Murdy because their main strength was Kevin. She asked the Titan leader to stay away until further notice. Rushmod appeared from the portal. He was convinced that Bibi was an immortal succubus. The place the necromancer fled to was only Earth. Kevin knew that Rushmod was happy to see him, but he didn't understand why he was so infuriated. Kevin remembered exactly that he died at his hands 5 times. Apparently, Rushmod had dementia. Rushmod knew it would be like this, at least until Kevin's rebirth. Rushmod noticed that Kevin looked worried. He asked if the necromancer wanted to save his cat. Rushmod's condition was to ask the guys outside to move away. He asked for equal sparring. The Saint asked Kevin if he thought it was a trap. She was sure that he knew about the difference between his suppressive power, but for some reason she asked him, perhaps it was a provocation. Kevin thought that since this happened, then he was aware that he did not yet have his previous strength. Murdy was shocked that the guy's strength was not at Alphen's level, but he was going to quickly make up for it until he owned it. He has not yet been able to summon that Lich and the Death Knights. Murdy said that it was dangerous. If he was going to fight Rushmod, then he must have at least Death Knights. Kevin said not to worry, and that he would end things with him before she could blink. Suddenly, the dungeon split and everyone began to prepare for battle. It didn't stop. They decided to set all the monsters on fire. It turns out that Rushmod did not intend to supply the guy with corpses in the dungeon. Kevin called Rocky. He promised that he would save Bibi, ordered him to deal with all this. A transformer was formed. Everyone was scared. Murdy could not believe that the immortal had lost his former strength. A sign appeared in front of Kevin. The guy noticed that it was different from ordinary dungeons. Kevin was called an idiot who knew that the guy would still follow the monster. Rushmod didn't know what he was hoping for without his corpses when he walked in there. Kevin said he could handle him even this way. Kevin, in Rushmod's opinion, was filled with arrogance, however. If they both went up against the same monster, he would be in a much more advantageous situation because he changed his body thanks to research on the Chimera. Kevin offered to give Bibi before the fight. It made Rushmod laugh that the guy was worried about such things. The monster couldn't understand why Kevin wouldn't stop worrying about little things like that to control them. Rushmod killed Bibi in front of Kevin. Rushmod guessed that Kevin was starting to get angry. Kevin's rage could not be expressed in the word anger. Rushmod was amused by the arrogant look of his interlocutor. Rushmod began to attack Kevin. This was the last day, according to the monster, when the enemy could behave like this. The monster did not expect that the opponent would react to the attack so quickly. He assumed that he drank some kind of potion. Kevin fought off the monster's attack with his sword. Rushmod did not understand where the necromancer had so much power. The monster realized that Kevin had become a warrior. The guy attacked the monster. The sword was replaced by a spear. The guy threw Rushmod into the wall. Kevin was bored. He did not understand why the monster went into battle with a warrior with such changes in his body. The guy killed Rushmod and said that they would see each other next time. Kevin had already begun to leave when Rushmod's words came from behind that the guy had not only defected to Earth, but had also exchanged the necromancer class for the pitiful skills of a warrior. Kevin didn't understand what it was about being a warrior that could have so much fun. Rushmod's body was restored despite the fact that it was cut in half. He again implanted something into his body. The monster wanted to make Kevin regret his choice. Rushmod summoned other monsters and ordered them to kill Kevin. At this time, Rocky was mercilessly smashing monsters on the street. Everyone was amazed at such power. With such firepower, the golem could single-handedly take on everyone. But he had his own mana limit. With no idea where all those monsters were going if Rocky stopped, he needed everyone to be in position and ready to fight. The Saint was more concerned about the immortal than the Titan of Destruction. How Kevin was going to cope with Rushmod alone, without his subordinate soldiers. Rushmod told Kevin to look at himself. He'd gotten to this point even though he only fought one chimera. Now, in Rushmod's opinion, he had to realize the price he paid for that bloody sword in exchange for the throne of domination. But no one said that he chose something instead. Kevin took advantage of the call. He put all his mana into Rocky, so it took a little time before the cooldown. Rushmod couldn't believe it. Kevin was a warrior. So it was, but no one said that he was not a necromancer. Rushmod called his opponent a bastard for deceiving him. Kevin started to attack and asked about the second round. Looks like Rushmod wasn't as good as he used to be. The current connection could not be stopped. According to Rushmod, Kevin himself had lost his power. Due to the wasted energy in his current state, he cannot win. But suddenly when Rocky defeated the enemy, his level increased and new powers appeared. Rushmod thought that Kevin was tired when he hit him on the head with a huge hammer. Kevin could not understand how the monster dared and cut off his head. Rushmod advised Kevin to enjoy while he could, because the connection had already been launched, and to escape if he wanted to live. Kevin had no intention of running away. The main character praised Rocky for his good work. The golem began to apologize to Kevin. Even if the summoned one dies, he will not disappear, but until resurrection he will unconsciously wander in the endless void. The guy asked Rocky to come back quickly and take care of Bibi. The golem disappeared. Kevin was sure that Murdy knew how Rushmod appeared outside the subway station. The Saint replied that the Earth had not yet fully synchronized. In fact, dungeons could not appear anywhere. The same should have happened to him. But this was no ordinary dungeon. This place was a summoning circle. Someone from Earth used a fragment of space. It looks like he was trying to summon a dungeon, but it resulted in Rushmod appearing. Kevin didn't understand who was such an idiot and why the hell it was necessary to summon the dungeon if he himself was not able to cope with it. Kevin told Murdy that he would not allow Thranit to come to Earth like this. He hoped for her cooperation. The Saint replied that she would make every effort to save Alphen if she could obtain the spatial dimension. Murdy knew that the man from the prophecy would be an immortal. The Saint will do everything in her power to help Kevin. After his unsuccessful fight with Rushmod, Kevin focused on leveling up in 6-star dungeons as a favor to the Titan Guild. Afterwards, the Ardal and Titan Guilds established a strong alliance in the form of an alliance. They considered the details of protecting the Earth and the expedition to Alphen. The conclusions drawn from the consortium, the army of Thranit and the position of Alphen, as well as the whole truth about the structure of the dungeons, led the whole world into confusion. The land was at risk due to the mining and use of bloodstones, but they also served as weapons against danger. The world was divided into two sides who entered into heated debates among themselves. On the side between those who believed that it was time to stop with dungeons, and between those who wanted to strengthen defenses through an active approach to dungeons. Given all the circumstances, the world needed a unified defense system. It was decided to convene a team to lead the worldwide organization of the Awakened. A month later, it was time to return. The leaders of Ardal and Titan shook hands and thanked each other for their work. Kevin thought it would be much easier for the Saint now that he didn't have to see the guy anymore. The guy thought he was right. The girl quickly denied it. It was written all over her face. Their next meeting was supposed to take place on Alphen. The Saint told her goddess that the day when she would return to her planet was already close. The girl felt the revelation of the goddess. The goddess told her to follow Kevin and stay by his side. The Saint did not understand why she was suffering all this. Kevin asked to be dropped off in the middle of the road. Then he was going to take a taxi. Alexander did not understand what about dinner with the president. Kevin said he didn't want to, but the president didn't call him just for the food. He asked Alexander to go instead, but Kevin needed to be there, and he also needed to elect a CEO. From that moment on, Kevin appointed Alexander as vice president and told him to go there. Kevin needed to go home because he was tired, and wished Alexander a pleasant dinner. Alexander did not understand what to do, because it was a meeting with the president of the country. He did not expect a new appointment. When the man realized what he had become, he began to laugh. The driver called the guild crazy. Kevin was on the phone and said he would be home soon. The taxi driver asked the guy for 25,001 for the trip. The guy just remembered that he had no money, since he forgot his luggage in the car with Alexander. Kevin asked to be taken to the metro station. He decided it was time to meet a guy he hadn't seen for a long time. John picked up the phone and asked Kevin how his trip abroad was. The guy asked if John was at home. Kevin asked John to go outside with 50,000 won, since he had nothing to pay for the taxi. The guy did not like the request. John didn't understand why this guy didn't change. Kaya asked where John was going because he had to take the last test. The young man replied that he would go out for a minute. Tomorrow is the national exams. The sister was afraid that he might have caught a cold, but the guy said that he would be quick and would lend Kevin the money. His sister beamed upon hearing the name. Kevin thought that Kaya was not at home. He said that it would be better for John to take the money out. The guy apologized for the disturbance. The girl said that everything was fine. She had not seen an old friend for a long time. The girl said that she quit the factory. The guy thought it was for the sake of a celebrity career. Kevin saw an article that said Kaya is a beautiful awakened girl. She asked to forget the previous topic of dialogue. She wanted to discuss something else. The girl showed him her web novel. She had always dreamed of becoming a writer, but now she was serious. He did not know that she loved to write. The novella said that a summoning circle suddenly appeared under the student's feet. Through this circle, the main character of the novel found himself in another world. He went through all the difficulties and became an expert, and was finally able to find a way to return back to Earth. But when he returned, the Earth was no longer the same. Humanity was dominated by monsters. Kevin assumed it was all written about him. The girl said that she was thinking about Kevin when she wrote it, but it turned out to be quite an interesting piece. Kevin noticed a lot of comments. The girl asked not to read them. Kaya wanted to thank the guy. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't be able to walk among people like this. She wouldn't even be able to do what she dreamed of. Kevin was sure that the girl could get through this, since she was strong in spirit and he just helped a little. According to Kevin, Kaya is brave enough to live such a life. Kevin arrived at the office and saw that the guild was now quite lively. The guy asked if the other first members of the guild were here. They were distributing rewards and should be here soon. Anna greeted Kevin. The girl transferred to the reserve unit and was no longer a lieutenant. She started work yesterday. There was still time before she would stop wearing the uniform. Kevin wanted to talk about this later when Alexander arrived and wanted to do a quick interview. The guy knew that the girl had an F rank. He was able to see this. Anna was shocked. When he analyzed her last time, she was level 11. Perhaps this was due to the strengthening of synchronization. Judging by the fact that she had increased 3 levels in such a short period, she had good potential. Due to the fact that the military used modern weapons, she did not have the opportunity to improve her awakening skills. He gave the girl candy and told her to eat it and then absorb the mana. Anna didn't understand why she needed such expensive enhancement stones. In her current state, he will not be able to help her. She must accept them. Kevin asked to just eat them first. The girl agreed. The girl understood that she could cope with this. Kevin noticed that she was doing great with her medications. The time has come for skills. The main character was thinking about which ones to choose. The initial characteristics of the ward were acceptable. And since she is a military man, she is good on the battlefield. He handed her the book and told her to hold it. She needed to perfect this skill because it was very important to her. He offered her another stack of books and told her to let everything bounce off her teeth. Liam burst into the room and addressed Kevin, looking worried. He had grown up enough. Kevin did not expect to be greeted like this after a long separation. Liam turned on the TV. Alexander was there, who signed a defense contract with South Korea. Kevin didn't understand what the vice president did after he ate. The main character didn't know the people in front. These were the head of the Ministry of Defense and the main leader of the army. Judging by the announced agreement, their guild will have support from the state. Now Ardal was responsible for national defense. They were a kind of state army. Liam said that in other words. This meant that most of their time would be spent in the army. Kevin was shocked. He only told Alexander to eat, and that led to this. Kevin said that when the little bastard comes back, he won't go anywhere. The guy himself began to get ready for the beginner's training camp. He was going to the dungeons. Several of his subordinates would go with him. Liam was surprised when he learned that Anna was awakened, that she had mana and skills. The guy began to squeeze Kevin's hand and said that he would work harder in the future. They offered to take Alexander back. The man asked for a ride to his office. The driver said they would have to move their office soon. Now Ardal is protecting the entire country. They will need a larger place. They will start working together, as they choose an office. Alexander did not sign the contract since Kevin's opinion mattered. The conditions, according to the driver, were excellent. They called Alexander and asked why he did not answer his calls. Kevin and the awakened ones went into the dungeon. Michael asked Alexander about what happened. Now is not the time for jokes. He did not understand how the signing of the contract happened. Alexander couldn't understand how Michael knew about this. It turns out it was all over the news. The man asked the driver whether the press conference was a live broadcast. He replied that in no case, and even if so, it was a pure accident. Alexander decided to stop by the office first. They were slippery bastards. There was no need to rush to reveal this news. The president suggested one thing at the dinner. He wanted to upgrade their guild to an organization called the Korea Defense Guild. The Ardal Guild is a stumbling block to keep Kevin, the strongest awakened of Korea. After dinner, there were negotiations. They promised to provide support if he could persuade the president. Alexander could not believe that they made a private press conference public even before receiving his consent. Apparently, they decided to show this to the public to gain approval, but this is impossible since Kevin is not a person like him. Having learned about what is happening, he will turn over the Blue House without blinking an eye. He had to prevent this so that Kevin would stay in Korea. Anna asked if they had made a mistake with the dungeon, since F ranks usually started with 1-star dungeons. Anna didn't understand what this meant. It didn't make any sense. Liam suggested that she might die, but they would definitely help her. Anna asked about the president. He had already come in a long time ago. The girl was embarrassed by this, because they came for training. The guy handed her a dagger and said that the training had already begun. Liam asked if she had ever gutted raw fish. Anna didn't understand where or why she was there. She noticed that Liam was quickly cutting up creatures and collecting bloodstones. She did not understand how this happened. Liam hurried Anna. At this rate, they would meet Kevin before he went below. She had already begun to extract bloodstones faster, but she still couldn't keep up with Liam, and she especially didn't understand how Kevin was hunting. The girl saw red flashes and thought they were monsters. There weren't just a couple of them. She didn't understand how the president missed them. This meant that Kevin was already returning. These weren't monsters, they were skeleton soldiers. Kevin was surprised that they weren't finished yet. Liam was in a hurry to gather the rest, but the president stopped him and told him to go into the portal. Anna realized that the president was not hunting alone, but had summoned hundreds of skeletons. Liam asked Anna if she was okay. It was always a little awkward going through portals in the beginning, but you quickly get used to it. Anna didn't understand why the clothes were still the same. It turns out they were made from materials mined in the dungeon. Kevin said they were on time. He asked Anna to come over. He told her to try to tame the creature. This creature turned out to be a level 57 saber-toothed tiger. Anna asked if she really had to do this. It seemed to her that she would be torn when she got closer. Kevin clarified that no one forced her to fight. She was asked to tame an animal. The president asked Liam to make sure that the tiger would not rock the boat. The guy jumped closer to the creature and greeted him. The tiger roared so loudly that the wind rose. Anna was too scared. Liam asked the creature why he shouted, since the guy didn't even touch him. The tiger rushed at Liam, but the guy used his ability, first apologizing for the pain. Anna was surprised. She heard that Liam had a B rank, but she didn't expect such strength. After all, Liam himself looked weak. The young man said that Anna could already enter their bone cage. The girl began to use the taming ability. The animal growled, for which Liam kicked it, telling it not to rock the boat. Anna told Kevin that even if she tried, she still wouldn't succeed, especially since she didn't have enough mana. Her mana began to slowly recover. She did not understand how Kevin could do this. The president told the girl not to rush. Everything that happened to her was natural, because they had a significant difference in levels. There were 2 methods of training: to be close to him, like friends, or to beat him and make him a subordinate. Anna did not know what to choose because the creature had already been beaten. The true villain this time was Liam. It was with the one who was beaten that she had to become close. Kevin asked about further actions. Liam tried to scare Anna in the cage. The girl did not understand what was happening at all, how they offered her to deceive him with the help of this clownery. Liam swung and broke the girl's bone with a blow. She was sure that the blow was weak. She asked the director to stop because her arm was broken. The distraught guy called her a weakling. Kevin advised her to quickly pretend that she was attacking him and then tame him. The girl swung wildly and hit the guy in the chest so that he flew off, breaking the cage. Apparently it worked. The creature looked at her with happy eyes. The tiger began to affectionately rub against her legs. It was great because she now had a protector. Liam asked about his acting. The boss replied that he acted like an Oscar candidate. Anna said Liam looked scary. She didn't know he was an awakened with physical abilities. But Liam was a magician. Kevin asked Liam what kind of face he just made. All this time, Liam believed everything the boss said. Maybe he became stronger because he had his support. But the guy was a fire magician, then why could he only wave his fists? He dreamed of becoming a wizard from the very beginning. Kevin asked how Liam felt about being the director. He only did small errands, which meant that he was an errand boy who was well paid. That's not what Kevin meant. When he needs someone to do his job for him while he's away, who else should he turn to? Liam was the number 2 head of this guild, which means that one day he will definitely become stronger. Advanced fire magic has high requirements which he does not possess, but now he could learn it. He congratulated him on achieving A rank. Now he has become a fireman. Liam couldn't believe he was complaining. Despite Kevin's good intentions, he would follow him for the rest of his life. Alexander thought about what he should do now, how he could convince the president, but without going against his will. Kevin greeted Alexander aggressively and told him to listen. Kevin asked the director about the news. Alexander said that it was all fake. The recordings were supposed to be published to the masses only after Kevin made the final decision. But there was a glitch. Kevin knew they were just making it look like a glitch, but they didn't offer a good deal. He was referring to the terms they could provide. The government will do anything to prevent you from moving abroad. In truth, some countries put pressure on the Korean government. But the problem was not the conditions. The real reason for creating the guild was to avoid conscription into the army. He could have joined the Hammer Guild if he wanted to avoid the army. Why bother creating a guild? It wasn't about the state. Kevin didn't want to work for anyone. Kevin couldn't do anything about it. The answer wouldn't take long to come. He asked to call reporters from the street. So he decided to leave the questions for later. And now, as the president of the Ardal Guild, he will tell everything from the very beginning. The agreement, which the state showed on the news, was not even signed. Kevin was terribly unpleasant from such an act. There was no contract as such initially. He asked to forget about everything. Kevin scared everyone with emigration. If they still dare to contact him, he will immediately leave the country. He asked them to convey this. The president told Alexander to finish what he started. A struggle with public opinion is coming, but there is nothing to fear, even if the opponent is the government itself. The director was glad that he did not go to the Blue House. After the Ardal Guild conference, the media and the entire internet went crazy. And yet, the agreement in question was not signed. It was all published in advance under the order of the state, and was rejected by the Ardal Guild within a few hours. This news caused a great stir among the public. At the same time, the Ardal Guild was preparing for the approaching disaster. In order to expand its scale, they hired new awakened ones. Alexander said on the phone that the president's decision was final and there were no grounds for revision. The calls gave him no rest when he was already up to his neck in business. He inquired about the number of applications for membership. There were 1,200 of them today, quite a lot. But the problem was that many were F rank. Usually, high-ranking awakened people were already members of guilds. And if not, it's because they wanted freedom of action. Even so, they will be useful, given that the president could help them. Liam and Anna were also initially F rank. In this, Michael was amazingly right. If the awakened ones can grow enough, then the scale of their guild will be able to compete with the 3 main ones. Kevin raised his level to 70. He was finally able to use his skill. It was because of it that in the past he was able to control an army of thousands. He deactivated the Summon Death Knight skill. He felt it, as did all 52 Death Knights in the summoning room. He also had a new recruit. The guy summoned the soul of Al-Sad. The goal of the deceased young man was liquidation. The guy ordered him to stop. The ghost could not move and understand how it happened. Kevin ordered him to kneel. He obeyed unconditionally. Kevin said he would leave him if he vowed to serve him. Al-Sad said not to talk nonsense. It seems that the young man was not fully awake and did not realize the whole situation. Kevin gave him the choice of submission or having his soul erased. The dagger that Kevin threatened belonged to the young man. He was sure that it was the one that killed him then. Al-Sad decided to obey. The main character approved of his choice. Now he looks like a Middle Eastern assassin. The required level of control was 312. Kevin was shocked by such impudence. He asked the assassin to come to him. Kevin asked just to look at this beast. Kiba appeared and forced the new recruit to bow before Kevin. It was a great honor for Kiba to see the immortal master. Statistically, the recruit had undergone proper training. Al-Sad was asked to watch his movements and move faster, and state his name and rank. Now that Kevin can summon Death Knights, hunting will become much easier. Death Knights are creatures capable of commanding an army on their own. Skeletons can fight freely under their command, even when he is away from them. Also, skeletons can move into the summoning room with Death Knights, and Kevin doesn't even have to hunt himself when he's in the dungeon. Kevin was told that the summoning room was very noisy. Bibi was asked about her condition. She did not like the question. When she becomes stronger, then she will show the cattle real hell. Her soul was depressed after the resurrection. Thank God her previous energy returned. Liam joined them. Apparently he had already mastered the flame skills. The guy said that it was all thanks to the boss. Bibi said that she had not seen him so strong for a long time. Liam asked who the kid was and pointed to Bibi. Kevin had forgotten that they hadn't met before. Liam remembered that Bibi was the cat they had picked up earlier. The young man reported that they had already collected all the death stones. Kevin was surprised at the speed. The guy found himself a couple of brats who helped him. Kevin will introduce them when the boss returns. Liam noticed that there were still monsters there, and he asked Kevin to leave them to him. The boss stopped his subordinate. It looks like Anna learned to tame animals on her own. The girl, riding on an animal, waved to her colleagues. Kevin was pleased that she was growing quickly. Liam couldn't believe that the girl was already D rank after just 3 dungeons. She had excellent work speed. She was really growing fast. It would be ideal if she could tame even more. Liam said she already has 20 of them. It looks like collecting bloodstones will go faster. Kevin said not to let such small achievements blind you. Liam and Anna still had to grow and grow. And there was something else that he needed to solve, to get rid of the forces that ordered Assad to kill him. Kevin asked George to contact the Titan Guild. The head of Titan picked up the phone and asked what was the matter. The head of Ardal asked if he remembered the guy he showed in America. The Guildmaster of Titan remembered. Kevin thought that he had found him, but it was not so. Asada was a famous killer. Assad had no connections with anyone. He is an independent mercenary, and he has many orders, most of which were carried out in Afghanistan. They were still trying to find those who were behind him. Kevin seemed to have guessed. He became aware of everything. As soon as he asked al-Assad, he was able to track all of his organizations and all of his clients. Titan was interested in catching the terrorists. No matter who they were, they had no right to attempt to kill Kevin. There was a reporter broadcast on TV about Kevin, that he raised the whole world's ears about whether he would accept orders from other countries. Another TV channel said they needed a system to grow A ranks like Kevin. An enraged William looked at this and could not believe his ears. The contract killing on Kevin, which cost him tens of billions of dollars, was unsuccessful. Quite a long time has passed since his last contact with the terror group. In addition, the chairman severed all ties with him. The status of the Hwarang Guild began to decline rapidly after Nora's death. William grabbed his head. He believed that it was all because of Kevin. Suddenly, a voice appeared and asked if he wanted to take revenge. William was scared. He was once again asked if he wanted revenge on Kevin, who killed Nora. An entity appeared before him that could lend him the strength to do this. If William wanted revenge, then he had to go to the dungeon where Nora was killed. William asked to show himself, but the entity disappeared with words that it would be waiting for him. The head did not understand what happened. He thought it was a ghost. Looking up, he saw Nora's sword, which was definitely left in the dungeon where she died. William picked up the sword and smiled evilly. The head of Titan was thinking about how to identify the terrorists and get rid of them. Guild Ardal only asked them for two things. To begin with, transport to Central Asia, and also stabilize the territory that will remain after the reprisal against the terrorists. Their guild provided transportation. The US military has already settled in that territory and is conducting a special operation. As they investigate the opponents, the only thing they can do is follow Mr. Kevin's instructions. If they fail, they will be publicly criticized by both the US government and the Titan Guild. But if you look from the outside, it will sound absurd that the Korea Guild is cracking down on terrorism in his homeland. Based on the current situation, should the head accept Ardal's proposals and take risks? The head of Titan was told by phone that the Saint wanted to see him. The Saint said that she must follow Kevin and leave Titan. Based on the situation, she had no choice. It was the goddess's prophecy. The Titan head was confused. The Saint's blessing and divination skills brought great benefits to their guild. Murdy created and allied with the Holy Knights to free Alphen. Without the Saint, the Titan Guild will suffer greatly, and it will be difficult to prevent future disasters. The Saint thanked the Titan for her attention, but she did not dare to go against the prophecy. She would leave everything that she received from them and leave. The Guildmaster could not stop her. But the head asked her to lead the Holy Knights. They were gathered under the Order of Arya. They will become a support if they are on the side of the Saint, Murdy was delighted. The leader said that he would be deeply indebted to her, so they would continue to support the Order of Arya. Her order will always be welcome among them. Murdy thanked him and said that the goddess wished them happiness. For him, this was the best alternative. He had to keep in touch with her. William walked towards that dungeon. He needed strength to take revenge. By chance, he approached the monument to Kevin. He hit it with a click. The monument shattered, and a stranger watched. The man asked what William was doing. The head of Hwarang lifted him into the sky with his power and asked if he recognized him. Another man came out of the booth and asked what happened. He reported that a suspicious awakened person had been found at the metro station and asked for reinforcements. William knocked the phone out of his hands with his strength and asked if the guard recognized him. Now both men were in the air. William thought he was being looked down upon. He killed both men and called them non-entities. William, without realizing it, ended up in a dungeon. It was too late to look back. It was necessary to deal with the dungeon and then get out of there. He didn't know if he could do it alone. A voice in his head said that for him it would be a mere trifle if he accepted power. A portal opened in front of him. A voice said that it would give him everything he longed for. There was an ice palace in front of the man. He assumed that someone was there. William didn't understand what kind of nonsense this was. All the monsters he met along the way did not attack him. Apparently the one who called was the owner of the dungeon. He opened the door and walked inside the ice palace. The creature on the throne was surprised that the man had actually come. William bowed. The king of this place said that he was quick to grasp. He liked it. He went downstairs and asked William to raise his head. A powerful stream of energy emanated from the creature. If the man had said something wrong, he would have died immediately. The king welcomed him to his spatial dimension. Kevin entered the plane. They wished him a happy flight to Baran. Not a single reception of other guilds compares with Titan. Murdy was waiting for him on the plane. She was glad to see him again. They called Murdy wicked, said the whole room stank of her, and asked her to be killed. The Death Knights went wild. Kevin didn't understand why that grandmother needed this. The holy woman couldn't use him as a necromancer partner. Murdy apologized. The goddess's prophecies were unquestioning. Kevin asked not to approach him. if he notices even a spark of holy energy without the need for it, there is a high probability that the Death Knights will quickly deal with it. He didn't speak to scare her, he spoke literally, head off her shoulders. She didn't even have time to blink. The girl understood it. Murdy asked the goddess to take care of her and wish her a smooth trip. At Baran's operational headquarters, they showed Narsur Salchai, based on the testimony of Mr. Kevin and others testifying in the document. In the past, he was indeed a businessman. Both the rebels and the government were engaged in the sale of weapons, asked to be on the alert. In addition to this, there were also illegal transactions. They thought that in this area they had a large negotiation point from which instructions were issued. It turns out that if they find out what these guys are doing, they will be able to understand who ordered the murder. Kevin asked where they should go to be closer to them. Kevin was asked to moderate his ardor because they would all be in the ass if the suspect ran away with the main evidence or get rid of it altogether. To begin with, they will share details with Kevin only after they have discussed everything. Kevin asked if he said he could watch them without being noticed. If they can lure the object, at least into the zone of his visibility, then he will be able to find out everything about him, including his movements, habits, his type of activity, and his subordinates. He will even learn about his latest transactions and scout out everything. The commander was shocked that the guy opposite could find out so much confidential information. It sounded decent, so they decided to start discussing the mission. 2 days later, Kevin asked the girl in the car why she should be nervous. She, a senior U.S. intelligence officer, Rachel, was there for the first time. Kevin told her to relax, to think that they were on a tourist holiday. The guy looked at the circle where the destroyed building was and said that the view was beautiful. This area was recently bombed, and people visited it often. Although such things usually cause chaos, it was a common occurrence there. The strange feeling of returning to the battlefield made him remember his days on Alphen. Rachel thought it was because the guy was confident in his strength, to think that he took the time to think about something else. They arrived at their destination, by the way. He asked to avoid actions that attract attention from others. He noticed the man he was looking for in a blue shirt at the second table. The guy noticed that the dish was to his taste. Rachel said that while there is still time, he should install his tracking device. But it was already installed. The girl did not understand when he had time. Kevin said to follow him. When she finished, he would wait. But there was one thing. The Shadow Stalker said that he had not felt this way for a long time. Still, this place was better than Alphen. Children approached him. He thought that they were begging for money, as expected. These children, who had lost their parents, found it difficult to survive. He turned around and saw the child. He was amused to see such a bright girl in such a place. A rare chance to see a child with such a radiant soul. He waved to her. The girl came up and said hello. The girl extended her hands to him. He began to give her money. At this rate, all the children in the area would gather around him. Suddenly, there was an explosion nearby. He really lost his grip, and it hasn't been that long since he returned to Earth. Rachel ran to Kevin and asked if he was okay. He asked where they went after he left. She said that 7 other explosions happened at the same time. It turns out that 7 more children died. If we judge this way, then there is a high probability that there are even more victims. Kevin said they wouldn't have to wait long. To use such an ignorant child as a suicide bomber. He had not felt so much rage in a long time. Kevin said he would find every terrorist and finish them off. A man with a bag over his head in a car asked another to save him. Kevin thought there was a lot of noise coming from this guy. The commander had previously said that he would not allow a targeted attack on the enemy camp. Kevin said that the man does not have to participate. He will do everything himself. He was asked what he was going to do alone. It would be difficult to distinguish between ordinary civilians and rebels, and he did not plan to eliminate everyone who caught his eye. Colonel Rogers said that Kevin apparently had a burning desire to become the most dangerous and brutal terrorist around here. Moreover, if he planned to recklessly invade their territory, then the rebel leader would most likely escape. The commander said that he understood his rage, but Kevin must understand that this problem was not one that he could solve on his own, and asked for time. In addition, their superiors decided to send reinforcements to the zone. Kevin stood up and said they had nothing to talk about. Rogers followed him and tried to stop him. Kevin threatened him with death and asked why he bothered. He didn't say he couldn't help. On the contrary, he had a solution to how they could accomplish this mission. Instead of going head-on, he suggested starting with killing the rebel commander. Kevin said that's where we should have started. Roman Baker was in the business of selling weapons on the black market, in collaboration with the government and the rebels. He was the only one who could stop them from gaining the upper hand over the latter. The rebels planned to capture him soon. They would make sure they were both captured so he could follow them. It is likely that they will be able to enter their headquarters camp without any problems. The infiltration went without incident. He wanted to start. The goblin level increased to 50. Kevin requested a body swap with the Shadow Goblin. It was an honor for him to be in the host's body. It was disgusting to switch bodies with a goblin, but there was no choice. To begin with, he decided to start with the 2 in front. leaving a mark on those who were not civilians. He had finally found the rebel leader. The goblin wanted to make his legs, since there was an execution planned and a bullet was about to be fired into his head. According to God's commandments, each of those listening must receive a punishment prepared from above. Asked to bow before God, those who disobey will receive a punishment 100 times worse. There were 25 rebel soldiers and 18 hostages, as well as the cry of those countless souls who undeservedly died in this desert. Kevin said that the speaker loves his brother very much. He carried out the punishment himself, since they did not have the right to do so. Kevin untied his hands and walked towards them. Trash like them isn't even worthy of God's punishment. It was all for the souls who died there. They started running away and calling Kevin Satan's minion. The bandits jumped into the car and told me to start it quickly. Ramson walked after their souls. Ramson ordered the soldiers to show themselves worthy before their immortal leader. Even if God didn't deal with their punishment, it didn't seem like they would receive his blessing. This was just the beginning. Kevin would turn each of them into his own undead soldier. Kevin thought about the remaining hostages. In front of him was the same guy with bulging eyes, selling illegal weapons. If Kevin twitches, then this guy will die. The man asked not to kill him, saying he would do anything for mercy. Kevin, with his power, killed the terrorist without touching him. The rescued guy thanked Kevin and said that he would definitely pay him. The main character did not need this. The rescued one assumed that it was because of his military status, and decided to send it secretly. Kevin asked him to shut up and put a dagger to his throat. The man said that this was wrong, because an American soldier should not be rude to his civilians. He said he wouldn't leave it like that. The guy would see. Kevin apologized. He said it wasn't worth it. Kevin slit his throat and said that he was not an American soldier. In place of this, the slain guy should have thought about the countless casualties that were lost on the battlefield. And now Kevin turned to the guy who was hiding behind the stone, told him to come out. He would count to 5, after which he would be dead. This guy turned out to be a war correspondent. His name was Tom. He heard about the hostages, so he came there. Kevin said that he was not late and to follow him. The guy asked what he should write down. The main character answered that the end of the terror. The commander did not understand what was happening. Looking at the tablet screen, the rebels should not have had so many tanks. They were all moving towards the base. Suggested that they began to squabble with each other. This report was sent by Hostage Rescue Team A. The man responsible for taking hostages who arrived in rebel territory was captured. They also discovered Roman's corpse, as expected of their awakened fighters. The commander asked about that, what losses they suffered. It turned out that there were none. The man was confused by this, but there was no resistance on the spot. Right now, some videos and photos have been circulating on the internet. The commander saw Kevin. The awakened one from Korea has declared war on the terrorists, and his rage rages across the desert. If everything was so, then all these enemy forces, as if for the final battle, are heading towards Kevin's undead army. The immortal Bell is furious, but not for himself, but for the adults and children of distant countries. If he had protected Alphen instead of Ardal, the planet could have been saved. Murdy asked the goddess that Kevin's anger would lead to the destruction of Tranit, and may a new order be established after his death. The furious man did not understand what these skeletons were. All major rebel bases were destroyed, including troops in cities under their control. The gunfire was useless, and as if they understood, the skeletons were only attacking the rebels. He was sure that they had followed them. He realized that he had been discovered. They didn't want to die idly like that. He asked to prepare this. The joint United Nations and U.S. forces had just begun to discuss the introduction of wax and humanitarian aid, until nothing had been decided. Kevin and his 10,000-strong army of soldiers stood on the threshold of the final battle. There might be people doubting the necromancer who controls such a large army. But amid the abyss of despair, for the first time he noticed a ray of hope. It came from a man who had worked as a war reporter for 15 years. And may he be reborn as a god who will surpass the king of the undead. This victory will turn him into a god. The goblin energy was approaching. Kevin wondered how long it would take him to escape, and finally he climbed out of his bunker. The main character decided to start immediately. He gave the order to burn the remaining garbage.